record. Do you want to record your Audacity or Audition? What's it called? Should we start at the same time? We'll do a 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Record.
Start.
1, 2, 3. Start.
Okay.
Up and running.
It's looking good, folks. Looking good.
This is exciting. We have a big star coming on the show. Can anyone guess who it is? Anyone? Don't look at the title below that you probably just saw.
Are you trying to, is this really going on the air?
I don't know. We like bonus materials. Hey, let's do a little bonus shout out to our patrons.
Okay.
Jody, you're the best. Thank you for supporting us. We love you.
Thank you, Jody.
And I love that you are down with all the parenting strife that we go through and the balance of career mom stuff. And I can totally appreciate that. As you know, we share that, don't we? And the online learning, it's a little bit of a shit show. And who else do we have? Alexander, we don't know so well, but we appreciate his patronage. And you're great, Alexander. Thank you so much.
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great. That's a good one. He keeps us up and running. We are we need to upgrade our equipment. Julianne was just yelling at me about this schlocky thing in the way here. Little things like that keep us going with Patreon. And then, ouch, you're pulling my ear a little. We're going to have to stay real close to each other.
Why have we decided to use this? Because I said probably, huh?
Well, I mean, it's the more reliable of the mics, right? And then the headphones. We could plug the headphones in here real quick with my splitter. Do the 2 over the ear kind.
Last minute. It's kind of scary.
I know. We should stay here. All right. And then our third patron.
Hair.
We cannot forget about Carla. Speaking of hair. She is a star on the show, Mouse and Weens. We love Carla. Thank you for everything you do, Carla. We have a deep, deep history and a deep, deep love and respect. And she's a podcast queen. She listens to a ton of things, plus audiobooks. She's an audiobook whiz. Did you know that? She has them always going when she's running around town.
Really?
Dealing with her new little baby, driving, cleaning, whatever she's doing. She's got audiobooks going in her ears. So she's very well read.
I love that.
And she still reads paper books too. So yes, we love Carla. And our patrons are very helpful in keeping us motivated too. Knowing that you see value in our show makes us see value in our show. And it's super important. And if anyone's hearing this that wants to join the family of Mouse and Weens, go to patreon.com/Mouse and Weens. So yeah, thank you.
Patreon.com/Mouse and Weens.
We hope you've heard your custom song. Julianne and Dan did it. Our old friend, Guitar Dan.
Dr. Dan Mahoney.
That's right. Mm-hmm. All right.
Sorry, I've been floofing the whole time.
Look at our notes. Oh, this is so exciting.
Are we really going to use this in the beginning?
Maybe.
Oh.
We always do our long, unedited videos. People get to see you floof.
I know, but look
crimp.
But can we just talk about...
Can we both just talk about?
You know what I do is I try to do something fun, and then I always end up just sticking it in a bun. Do something
that
fun,
rhymes.
Sticking in a bun. Because it's easier.
I think I need a more poppy lipstick. You have a nice pink one. And I look like I died over here in the corner. Are these lights too bright? Is that what's happening? What if I turn this one off? Is that better?
Yeah, get rid of that.
Get that Anna here. No more lights. Oh, I hope our friend joins us. This is a big moment.
Well, he will.
Okay. So Weens, what have you been up to?
Well, I've just been here floofing.
And all right, let's do some hints about who our guest may be.
Don't bump this mic.
I know. It's right in the middle of us though. All right, we have...
What are you going to do about this mic situation? Are you going to buy something else, or is this the only thing that works?
I'm sure there's lots that work. This one's a good one, but the arm is...
stinks. Can I...
Funky. There's the candle right there. Put the candle on the edge of your desk, maybe. It'll help.
It's going to light that lamp on fire.
Ooh. Well, don't light it.
That's
Just
all right.
have it.
Think about the
Just
dog.
So I'm going to go back in time on his filmography.
Let me check phones and make sure we're all getting hooked up okay.
All right, ready? I'm going to just list in chronological order, starting from... Hey!
Oh my gosh! Hello!
Am I late?
There you are.
There you are.
Well,
How you doing?
Sorry. I'm doing all right.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Hanging in there, huh?
It's been, what, 4 years?
It's been a little long. I know. What have you been up to? No.
Well, let's introduce us. Or do you want to do any little pre-chat, or should we?
Let's make sure our audio and everything.
You got good audio? I've got a Shure mic attached to this. I'm on an iPad, so does everything
good.
sound all right?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. There was a little bit of but it might be because we're all talking over each other. So we'll just stay super quiet in between.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
There we go.
Yay.
What is in the back of you? What's that photo?
I know.
Oh, well, that's a drawing of, that's Lemmy Kilmister, and then the painting of Lemmy.
Yeah.
And Motorhead, the band Motorhead. Lemmy was a friend of mine. He was a musician who kind of lived life on his own terms, and he died a couple of years ago.
I remember, wasn't he a regular at the Rainbow Room?
Oh, all the time, sitting at the video poker machine at the end of the bar. Yeah.
I've heard so many stories about, everybody has a Lemmy story, it feels like, in Hollywood, and he was such a instrumental figure in so many. What was he to you?
Well, I was a Motorhead kid, a fan as a kid. Well, I was around 20 when I first heard the band, and then I really got into them. They were always an underground heavy metal / punk band. They kind of appealed to both crowds. And then I met Lem in 2000. A friend of mine, he had hired to play a gig with him. He was doing a cable TV show. And are we recording? Is this?
Yeah, this is official.
Yeah. Do you want
we can always give you final cut to pick out whatever.
Well, I can tell this story. It may be unbecoming to some of your audience, but this was my meeting Lemmy. So he had this aura about himself. He was an incredibly bright man. Read voraciously, read history, collected Nazi memorabilia, which is a story in and of itself. As I got to know him, I said, what's all the fucking Nazi stuff? And he said, well, I'm not a Nazi. I've never been a fucking Nazi. I know what the rumors are. But my earliest memories in London as a small child were that those were the motherfuckers who were trying to kill me. Well, they're all dead, and I own their shit. I win. But anyway, the day that I met him, I was invited to come down to their rehearsals, and it was a Sunday morning. So I got there at like 10:30 or so, and Lem is shirtless in his jeans, wearing his white leather cowboy boots, just exactly like you imagine Lem being. And Zach goes, "Oh, Lemmy, this is my buddy Earl. Hey, nice meeting you. Nice meeting you. Earl, do you want a drink?" Oh, man, it's Sunday morning. But it's Lemmy, sure. So he had a Maker's Mark. He had two cases. He only had one with him at a time. One was for a Maker's Mark bottle, and one was for a Jack Daniels bottle. And it was a Halliburton case. It cut out for a bottle and 2 glasses. So he pours me a Jack Daniels. We had a few. So we start singing songs. And we had a guitar pull. And I knew he loved the Beatles. He used to follow the Beatles. And he was Jimi Hendrix's roadie. When they started the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Lemmy was their original roadie in London. Oh. So I knew he was a Beatles freak. So we sing like a dozen Beatles songs. And Lem turns to me and goes, "Oh, do you like ABBA?" Well, I think he's pulling my chain. The heavy metal god liking ABBA. I said, no. He said, well, you missed out on the greatest sense of pop melody outside of Lennon and McCartney. Zach, you know any ABBA? Zach starts Fernando. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. So Lem starts singing Fernando. I'm drunk. It's Sunday morning. My thought was, I should be in church. And then I thought, I am.
The Church of Lenny. Why not?
But that was Lem, yeah.
Well,
he was a profound guy. I've seen videos of him spewing lots of knowledge. He was interesting.
Well, he turns to me that morning. This is the well, he turns to me because his son Paul had just moved over from London, and Paul had this on and off relationship with his father growing up, because Lem was gone all the time. Lem was never married, including Paul's mother, and so he would see him every 6 months or so. Dad would show up and they would go do something, and Lemmy had lost his dad in World War II, so Lem never had a father. So that was all of the Nazis are the fuckers that killed his dad or caused his dad to. So anyway, Paul was there, and they're talking about this, that, and the other in London. And he brings up some guy, Liam. Oh, Liam hates me. He goes, no, Dad, I don't think he hates you. He does, he's a bit odd, since he had the accident. He goes, oh, he hated me before he had a steel plate in his head, and he hates me after he's got a steel plate. He turns to me and he goes, I screwed his bud. He never got over it. Well, being an American, I thought, well, my God, that's an unusual thing to do to one of your friends' pets. and I went, oh, his girlfriend. His girlfriend. He goes, beautiful girl. She had inverted nipples. Have you ever had a woman with inverted nipples? I went, no. No. He said, well, it's a tasty treat if you're willing to put in the work. So that was Lemmy. That was Lemmy.
See, he could write a little essay on nursing for new mothers that suffer from that problem.
Yeah.
He has some tips. That's good. Oh my God.
But I've never met anybody like him that was that bright, and just he was a drug addict. He lived on speed and whiskey. And anyway, he was a friend of mine. He was a unique individual, and I was gifted that drawing by an artist who found out that I was a fan. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yay.
And this is just audio. We're not showing this video or anything, right?
It's up to you. We always have a backup video. I mean, we do put it on YouTube unless you don't want to, and then we could just do audio.
I don't care. Whatever.
You don't care? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I'm Joelle. I'm Mouse. And that's Julianne. You remember her. That's Weens.
Yeah.
Yay. So we're so glad and honored to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. We're very happy to see you. And we feel like we've seen a lot of you. We've done some deep dives into your background, your research. And I was just going to ask you what you've been up to during all this time as a busy actor. What?
Yeah, quarantine. What happens?
Well, the hiatus just pulled the plug out of everything, I have done about a month, 6 weeks ago, the wheels started to turn again. I did a little independent film with Elijah Wood that we shot here in Los Angeles. And so that's done. And then I start back on a thing. I am not allowed to talk about it because of my NDA, but I start work on a thing back here in December that takes me through the next spring that I'm awfully excited about. And I wish I could share it, but the NDA is 7 pages long, so I can't talk about that.
So it sounds like a big deal.
It is.
Do you have a heavy shooting schedule and it started up already or just coming?
No, well, it's, it's a very popular show. That's first season is an enormous hit. And the second season is coming up soon. And I did some work on that. And then I don't even know what the schedule is. It's a heavy effects makeup stuff. So they booked me for 3 months. So I do have that coming up. And I want to talk about it, but I can't
That's
That's
okay. Oh my gosh, that's exciting though. Good for you.
Yay.
That's great.
And Elijah Wood's awesome. How was it working with him? I had gone on the road shooting video for Gogo Bordello, and he was dating one of the singer dancers with Gogo Bordello. Do you know that music band?
Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he would stay up all night. He was really into music, and I'm sure you guys connected on that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. That and horror movie. Yeah, we talked a lot about it.
That's awesome. Yeah. How fun. What is the name of that project? Can you talk about that one that's coming out?
You know what? I'm not sure.
Okay, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it.
I signed an NDA on it. That's what's ridiculous now is it's not on the internet, like the information about this film I've done with him. So I'm hesitant to talk too much about it because it hasn't been officially announced.
Yeah.
And now with social media being what it is, you know, and the rabid fans, you know, everyone is so, I don't get a script that doesn't have my name embossed on it, you know, even through email, because they want to find the leaks if somebody leaks the material out. So I'm not sure how much of that I can talk about.
Okay.
I can just say I've done it with him.
That's all you need to say. We won't go in. I know it's scary. Yeah. All right. Then we'll talk about stuff that is already out. Okay. You and I met on Scream.
Yay, Scream.
And how is
Yes.
that was one of your first big breakout movies. Did you, right?
That was the first movie that I had billing on. That was a big, huge hit. Yeah. Yeah. That was in 96.
Did you ever expect that?
Hell no. I mean, I had read the script. I had done 2 movies with Wes. Wes was Wes Craven. He was the first like Hollywood name that took me under wing. You know, that was just a twist of fate. I came out here I'd kind of hit the glass ceiling in Chicago. And I was with an agency then that were in Chicago and here. It was sisters that ran 2 offices. And every year they would send out 5 or 6 people that were doing well in Chicago. So I came out here in the February of 1993, and I got a TV pilot right off the bat. So I go to New Orleans to shoot it, and then I came back, and the pilot didn't get picked up, but I got back and I got a TV movie, and I called my wife and I said, we got to move out here because this is low-hanging fruit. So we pulled up stakes from Chicago and moved here that summer, and then it was nothing, 7 months of nothing.
Scary. And
which was the longest I had gone without working since I'd gotten out of school. That, you know, not getting some kind of a paycheck is an error. So the casting director who did that pilot was doing, I got a call. They said, Wes Craven, Gary Zuckerbrod is casting this new Wes Craven film, and he'd like to bring you in. Great, Wes Craven. Because I love Nightmare on Elm Street. It's one of my all-time favorite films. Still is one of my all-time favorites. And so I hated the sequels. I didn't know that Wes did not have anything to do outside of Dream Warriors, which is actually all right. But he had no voice whatsoever, no say-so in what became of Freddy Krueger. So anyway, they said, well, it's a new Wes Craven film. They're not releasing a script because they're real secretive about this, but you can go and read the script at the office. So I thought, well, I'll just go in an hour early and I'll read the script before the audition. So I get there and it says Nightmare 7 on the door. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in a damn night. I don't want to be in one of those.
Yeah.
And then I start reading the script. And it was the first like meta horror film. It was incredibly smart. You know, it was, I don't know if you ever saw it, Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yeah.
The idea was it was the 10th anniversary of everyone who had worked on the film wanting to have dreams of Freddy. People had worked on the film were starting to suffer and die. So Wes played himself in the movie. So it was a movie about itself. And it was quite clever. Anyway, I got cast in it. And there's one scene, there's a decent scene. We shot this abandoned hospital here in Los Angeles. And I was wrapped at about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'm in the honey wagon, you know, the small dressing rooms, the trailers. I have a honey wagon, so I'm in there changing to go home, and there's a knock on my door. I opened. It's Wes, and he just said, "I got to thank you. Gary really pushed for me to hire you, and he has very holds you in high regard. I'm very glad we're going to do something else together down the road. So a year passes, and Vampire in Brooklyn was happening, and my agent at the time, they couldn't get me in the door, and I kept pushing. I said, look, he told me. So finally at the last minute, it was a one-line part, like literally one line. So I'm like, I'll do it because it's Wes Craven. So I got there, and it was at Paramount in the Roddenberry building in a conference room. And I remember I opened the door. He and Marianne, his producer, and Lisa Harrison, his assistant, are sitting at the other end of the room. And as I'm closing the door behind me, I hear him say to Marianne, oh my God, why didn't we have him here earlier? So I get there, and he goes, I'm embarrassed that you're even brought in on something like this. Well, what happened is an actor got sick, unfortunately, that had been hired. So then I got bumped up into that role that the other actor was supposed to play. And it's still, the movie was me. And when we finished, Wes gave me his number, his home number.
Wow.
He said, stay in touch with me. The next film, we're going to find something. And that film was Scream. It was called Scary Movie, when we first started. I still have the script here somewhere. I have that original script that I had on set. But cool. So that was how that one came about.
And that one,
we met because Jamie Kennedy had a crush on you. We were in the video store, and I drove down there because I wasn't working that day. So I drove down to have lunch on the set. Jamie goes, hey, have you seen that girl that she's working in the background? Have you seen? I said, who? That, what? Over there, her, that one. It was you. And then you and the crew came out. Because we always had a party every night, and y'all showed up at the hotel. Do you remember that? When I called him and I went, you need to come down here to the party. Dude, I'm watching the ball game. I said, you need to come down here to the party. I'm in. I don't want to. I said, you really want to come down here to the...
So basically you pimped her out. You deserve some pimp fees. And
he just had a crush on her. So,
You know what I remember too is he sent you over to go say, hey, you walked over to me, and I think it was in the video.
Oh, yeah.
And you said, hey, my friend over there, he kind of likes you, and he kind of wants to get your phone number. And I was like, and I was saucy back then. And I said, well, you could tell him to come over and ask me himself. And then I guess he did.
Yes, I had forgotten that. It's like elementary school.
It was so
one
funny.
Step away from check yes or no. Yeah.
oh my gosh.
And then he came over later, and I happened to be in the dirty video section, and I was looking at some long dongs, and he came up and he was like, ooh, that's a good one. And I was like, the rest is history. But
Well, do tell the history. Did anything happen, or you guys just stayed friends?
oh, we don't. That'll be the B-side album. We did end up hanging out a few times, Jamie and I. That's a story for another.
I have ages.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while.
Scream was my first experience of what was because it became huge, and we had I'd done a couple of movies in Chicago, so I'd kind of got the thing, movies are like summer camp. Everybody goes away and you meet this group of interesting strangers, and you guys have a shared experience for, a couple of months, and friendships form and romances form, and then everybody goes home and they go back to the next project.
Yeah.
So I realized even in Chicago, because people that I was like close with, I'd call it like, hey Bruce, hey man, it's Earl. Oh hey, so I'd already gotten used to that part of it. But with Scream, when we had the premiere here, because they'd already tested it, they knew they had an enormous hit on their hands. And I'm excited about going to the premiere party because I'm like, I'm going to get to hang out with my buddies, just like we did, because we hung out every single night on shooting that movie, and all of our hangout places burned down in the fire. The round barn that was up on the hill, the hotel that we all stayed at in Santa Rosa a couple of years ago. Anyway, going to that Scream premiere, it was the penultimate Hollywood see and be seen crowd. Like everybody, like there's all the heat. and I couldn't even get to say hello to David or Courtney, or because they were surrounded by, and that was when that was a real disappointment for me, in that I realized what Hollywood, the red carpets are, what the premiere, what that scene is. It's about publicity. It's not about celebrating and hanging out with your buddies. And then, things catapulted for so many people involved with that film, including Jamie.
Yeah.
And then, and he was younger than me. And like, he came over to my house, and I think he was weird. Still the house I live in now. I just bought it back then. And he was kind of weirded out by the fact that I had a quasi-normal life, So yeah, I haven't seen him in a long, long time.
That's weird. I think some people, that's why I love you so much. I've always felt such a good vibe from you, that you've always had this nice grounding spirit to you. And there's very few people in Hollywood that have that, who are just good people. And yeah, I ran into a few people because I worked on Nash Bridges, and Matthew Lillard came and was on a episode of that. And I talked to him, and, you never want to talk bad about anybody, but definitely egos blew up, I think, from that film. And then I think people were humbled later, by like, that was a huge hit. And then it was hard. It's always hard to get work, I would imagine, depending on, did you ever have periods of just where something was huge and then it was a couple years of not being able to get roles after?
It's never gone that long.
Yeah.
The way 2 years after Scream, with the success of Scream, because it was the first movie that I had billing on. Now, that wasn't negotiated. That's the first and only time I've ever had front of movie, my name that Wes put up. Of course, the opening credits are at the end of that movie.
Yeah.
But I naively didn't even know that matters as far as your career, where your billing is and all that shit. Yeah. So that was the first movie I had billing on. And then 2 years later, Something About Mary hit. And that's the one where I'm like, all right, baby, here we go. House is paid for. Here we go.
I love it.
And nothing. And that was a sobering experience. Yeah. And I was ignored or cut out of all the celebratory award seasons and everything. I wasn't invited to anything.
What?
And that really bothered me, because it's not like I had a great experience making that movie. And I was frozen out of the success of that movie. And then, but I still thought, well, there'll be a fucking sequel, because, this movie made $200 million, made $1 billion in the year with all the ancillary stuff. But I'm still thinking, all right, well, at least there's the sequel, and I'll get some payday on the sequel. No sequel.
It's so weird.
Yeah. So when Ben Stiller made Tropic Thunder, there's that whole speech that Robert Downey Jr. has to him about Happy Jack. Yeah. Never go full retard.
Yeah.
Never go. The audience you always got to know. The audience has got to. And I emailed Ben and I went, well, that explains my career.
Oh.
But
no.
But two things with that. I think everybody actually bought the character. They believed it. And I knew instinctively that was the only way to make it funny, was to play it honestly. Because if you goofed it up or made a joke of the character, A, it's not going to be funny. B, the audience is going to hate you. And I don't flippantly use that R word that I just used.
Yeah.
Because Warren himself, the real Warren Tajan, plays Freddie in the movie. And he, at that point, when we shot the film, it was written for him to play Warren, but they were afraid that it was a little too much for him to pull off. So they created Freddie for him. And he was the president of the National Association of Retarded Citizens, is the name of the group. And Warren, he was the past president of the group at that point. But the blessings of that are twofold. One, personally, it was a few years after the movie, but I was out at the Roxy here, and this girl come up to me in the crowd, hey, are you? And she told me the story of that movie. She said that her brother has Down syndrome. And she said, my mom was wanting to see it. And she said, I had the VHS, I had the tape. And she goes, I wasn't sure how my mom and how they would take it. But she was adamant. So she said, take the tape over there. I'm watching it at my mom's house. And she goes, Warren came on the screen. He said, my brother didn't say anything. He stood up and he walked to the TV and he goes, he's special. He's like me.
Oh.
He's like me.
Yeah.
And said he went and sat down and he goes, then we laughed our ass off for an hour and a half. So that hit me of like that. We talk about representation. Everybody deserves to see their experience and their life reflected back to them. Yeah. You know, they deserve to have to bring their life experience to a story. So I'm greatly honored by the fact that that family, you know, had that hour and a half of pure laughter. And that her brother got that connection. Yeah. And then career-wise with that, this was after Deadwood had happened. Deadwood was the one that knocked me for a loop because that show was, I invested my heart and soul in that. Yeah. And I worked on the writing staff. So I was working on it constantly, sitting here at this desk. So when it got canceled, I said, that show didn't end. That show stopped. And there's a big difference.
Oh, that was so infuriating.
Yeah, it threw me into a funk, a big one. And I had not worked in a while, and money was low. And my wife, because when we had our daughter Anna, right after Something About Mary, she stopped working full-time to be a full-time mom, which all worked out perfectly for us. But I'm bitching and griping about something. Because somebody I used to audition for was getting paid $5 million to do a film. And I'm getting close to broke. And Carrie, just out of the blue, she goes, what are you proudest of? I said, what? She goes, career-wise, what are you proudest of having been a part of? I went, well, Deadwood? She goes, yeah, when was that? I went, 2002 was the pilot, series 04. She goes, yeah. If things had catapulted for you because of Something About Mary, you'd be the fat, goofy guy in broad comedies. They never would have cast you in that part, and you never would have taken that part. You'd have been a star to play a supporting part.
That's a good woman.
So, she was right.
That's a good woman.
Right.
I like that. Can I stop for 1 second? Are we worried about audio glitching like that?
We've had a couple glitches, but I think it's pretty.
I wonder, is your cell phone right there to be able to just do a backup audio recording? Is that too much to ask?
I'm looking. Well, I only have, I got on one bar. Let me check my, hang on just a second. Let me check my connection. Because I have a booster that should come on out here. I may be on the wrong thing. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'll lose you or not.
That's
good call.
Oh, there we go. Hang on. Let me get the booster.
Yay!
I love those things. I'm just going to do this for a quick promo. All right, let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. Okay, thank you. And those were our sponsors. Very good. Here we go. All
right, let me find you. And there we are. I have full bars. Yeah, I didn't have my Wi-Fi was connected to the wrong box. So
I hate to interrupt people when you're in a flow, but it's going to be a world of difference, I think.
All right.
Okay, now.
Can I ask a quick question?
Well, yeah, me too.
Your wife just came up too. I love the fact that you guys are high school sweethearts. Is that right? And you've been together since forever, right? You've been.
Our first date was in October of 1982.
I love that.
And well, she was still in high school. I was in college. I knew her before, but it was a group of her friends were going to, she said, some friends are going to the movies. Why don't you come and meet us at the movies? And I said, well, she's really cute. And I said, well, what movie? She said, Halloween 3. And I'd already seen it, and I hated that movie. But she was really cute. So I went to see Halloween 3 a second time. So yeah, we started dating right after that. And then we broke up when I moved to Chicago for about a year and a half, and got back together and been together ever since. But the great thing for her, that's why my friend Clark Middleton, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, Clark, he said, my daddy taught me, you give the world your best, the best will come back to you. And my wife, her dream as a kid, well, you can't see it, but there's a roll top desk sitting over there that was her grandfather's, an antique roll top. And she used to sit at it and play office. Now, we come from blue collar family from rural Kentucky, both of us. And she said her dream was to work at some big company someday. Now, how the fuck she thought she was going to do that living in Murray, Kentucky, I don't know. But that was her childhood dream. So when we had our daughter, she wanted to be a mom. So her dreams were set aside. And during Anna's second year of college, Carrie had volunteered for everything. She volunteered she was the chairman of the Arts for All Council, which was funded arts education funding here in Burbank. And then she was a choir mom. Competitive show choir is a big deal at Burroughs High. They shot the Glee pilot, was actually shot at their high school. And my daughter was part of that. And Carrie was a choir mom. So through her volunteer, she got to know one of the other volunteer moms worked at Disney. Anyway, long story short, in his second year of school, Carrie got a call from the HR at Disney. Said, we'd like to speak to you about an opportunity. So she got hired by Disney. She is an exec at Disney. Been there 2 years now. So her dream came to her. You know, she put other people first. She put her daughter first, and then volunteering and giving of herself to the community. And she is one of these people that she gets a job done to the best, and she's quite bright. So anyway, yeah, that was another dream deferred that circled back around. Aww, so the world gave its best back to her. So
that's great.
It's nice you see that too.
Yeah, this is kind of my life, although I'm married to a lawyer that sits at a desk, so it's a little bit different than an actor, a whirlwind actor going on locations and shoots. Did she hold up pretty well? Did she come with you with your daughter, or?
When Anna was small, we wouldn't go more than 2 weeks. That was our given. Either you come and visit or I come home. Luckily for me, Deadwood happened when Anna was 3 years old, or 4, right when she turned 4, when I did the pilot, and it was here in Los Angeles. So that took me from 2002 to 2006. So I was here. I went away a couple of times and did films, but it's rare. It's only been since Anna was in high school that I've had relocation jobs. Like I spent 5 months in Austin, Texas in 2014. I spent 5 months in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2016. And then last year I was in Wilmington for 5 months. But again, that's only been since Anna is born. Now, when I was in Austin, they came to visit. But by the time Albuquerque, they couldn't. That was competitive show season, and it was her senior year, so there was so much going on.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's
well,
great.
Can I go back to, we have so many questions and we have them in order of, and you tell us when you need to wrap up, but we've got, I love it. I love that you're available and free. This is so cool.
This is Kentucky. My husband's from Kentucky too. And
oh, where?
Things just roll. Lexington. His dad was a professor there. So he spent from 0 to 17 years old there. And then moved.
Where did he go to? Did he go to school away? Obviously, at 17.
Yeah. Then he came here, finished high school in Del Mar, and then went on to University UC Riverside. So yeah, right around here. But his heart's still in Kentucky, and we have yet to go back. So, but he's got that same mellow, just like roll with it. It's all
totally. You guys are you're just grounded. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we elect Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul.
Amy McGrath. Yeah, get Amy McGrath in there. Everybody who's listening, please help campaign for that. Donate to her fund. We got to get Mitch out of there.
Yeah.
I have.
Yay.
Very good. All right, so let's hear some of these questions. We have some fans, and we also had some other podcast pals that wrote in and wanted to know certain questions.
So I did them in order of Scream, Something About Mary, a couple general questions, and then Deadwood. So the first one on Scream is, what was it like being on one of the biggest blockbuster films so young? You kind of answered that, though, I would say. Do you have any?
Yeah, it was, well, nobody knew it was going to be a blockbuster film. You know, that was the thing with Scream and Mary both. were studio or studio adjacent films. So they had enough money that we didn't have to cut every corner, but we didn't have a huge budget either, which meant there wasn't a lot of studio oversight.
Yeah.
Because when the bigger the budget gets, the tighter the reins get. So both of those films were just, they weren't expected to do anything.
Yeah.
And both of them came out of nowhere and were huge. So with Scream, again, I had no clue. It wasn't until I saw it all cut together that I realized, like, oh shit, this is something.
The energy was really, I talked to Wes that day in the video store and had a chance to, and it was just a real mellow vibe, and he was really mellow, and he talked about, he was joking around about Johnny Depp. He said, so how's it going? He goes, well, it would be going a lot better if Johnny Depp called me back. I did launch his career. And he was just like chatting with everybody. It felt like just a fun day out at camp or something.
Well, that we didn't find out till toward the end. The first thing he cut was, and ironically, just yesterday, sitting in here, I did a thing for Drew Barrymore's show. She's got a new talk show. That's right. So she's doing a Scream thing. So I did a Zoom with them that's going to be used as part of that. So I was just thinking about all this Scream stuff. Wow. But that opening segment with her was the first thing he shot. He almost got fired. Like the Bob Weinstein, Harvey's brother, that was his, Dimension was his label. And this was the first film. And they're looking at the dailies and, I don't see a film here. I don't see a film. So Wes convinced them, let me cut this together. It's there. Trust me. So for that first 2 weeks, he was shooting all night and then editing all day. He had his editors there. So he's working with them to get that opening segment cut, the Casey Becker segment. And, it's one of the all-time classic horror scenes of all time. And then he sent in the rough cut of that, and that's when Weinstein goes, oh, what do I know about horror? I know nothing about making horror. This is great.
Good.
So, yeah, he almost got fired. He almost got fired for shooting what was, the classic scene. So, he was still just, he was like your favorite college professor.
Yeah.
That was his demeanor. I mean, talk to him.
Yeah, super mellow. That was another question from someone was, what was your favorite kill in that movie? Yours.
Yeah, this was from Kelly at Boobies and Newbies. Just giving her a shout out.
In that film, well, because I did it, was mine. But oh gosh, what was that? I'm trying to think of the character name. In the garage door.
Oh, it's Rose McGowan scene. I can't remember her character name either.
Her character name, not Casey Becker was Drew.
Drew's.
Prescott was Nev. Gail Weathers. Well, we know who we're talking about. That one.
Yeah.
That was a wickedly inventive way to off someone in a slasher film.
Love it.
Yes.
That was great.
Pretty quintessential. Yeah.
Okay, so next we're going to move on to something about Mary. Okay, the classic question you've been asked a million times. Did Warren find his baseball from Brett Bederson?
It was underneath the couch. We actually did a shot that the camera was underneath the couch with the ball in the foreground. We actually set up and shot that. And they decided, it's better to leave it a mystery.
Oh, there you go.
Couch, yeah.
So all these years later, people are still asking that question.
That's great. Answered here. You heard it here first.
And then, so you talked about the mentally challenged character and that you pulled from other characters like Rain Man and who did you bring to it the most?
I just, I used to do stuff like that just to keep myself amused. Like I would put some kind of little inside joke in a movie, in one of my performances, like in the Meatloaf movie. I did a movie about Meatloaf for VH1. And there's a scene where he got signed when he sang for the Columbia record executives. And I had them make name tags that said Bobby Fleckman, all from Spinal Tap. It was the character Spinal Tap, the record executive name. So I just did little crap like that just so it would amuse me as I watched the movie. That's the great. Only one in Something About Mary, because I had a plethora of, I had of Mice and Men, I had Rain Man.
Gilbert Grape.
I had well, the one that Bobby, and I didn't tell anybody that I was doing this. I just did it.
Yeah.
And I had, the only joke that got nullified was I had props after I beat up Ben and I'm in the chair. Hey, I almost got fired from that movie. Well, I'll finish that story.
Sure.
It was this scene where I'm sitting in the chair and I said, well, because he's so big, he eats a lot. So bring me food. I said, can you bring me biscuits with mustard on them? Just bring me biscuits of Sling Blade, because Sling Blade was almost a year old at that point. Well, Bobby walks over. Bobby Farrelly goes, what's with the biscuits with mustard? I'm like, oh, it's just a little inside joke. And he goes, yeah, but that's kind of a Zucker Brothers joke, not a Farrelly.
Oh my God. He caught it.
So nullified my biscuits with mustard.
That's hilarious.
Yes, but back to, that was one of the early things that we shot. The studio had wanted, for something about Mary, they wanted a name in that role. Now, again, on the page, there wasn't a lot to it. But they were still, they had their list of known names. And the Farrellys were adamant. They said the audience has to believe this character. They have to believe his condition. If it's a known actor playing this role, no matter how good they might be, the audience is going to know this is an actor pretending, and the humor won't work. So they won their argument. I was the guy. And then as we were shooting, I found this out afterwards. And there's a studio exec who's made his entire reputation on he oversaw that film. And that's the son of a bitch that wanted to fire me. He saw the dailies, like, it's uncomfortable. It's too real. It's like painful to watch. It's uncomfortable. Well, that's kind of the point in certain scenes.
Otherwise, it's a parody.
Yeah, it was that scene where the fighting, where I'm on the chair, where he's so upset. And that was the one that triggered them. So yeah, but the Farrellys, I didn't get fired.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
you were
when
the best part of that movie.
I know.
When I saw that guy in the trades and I'd see his name climbing the ranks and everything, it listed something about Mary for Fox.
Yeah. How was working with Chris Elliott, by the way, who I just love?
I didn't have anything with him.
Oh,
so
that's
I
right. Yeah.
And I never even met him. We never overlapped when
That's
I was
so
there.
interesting how that happens. He was probably only brought in for a couple days or separate weeks. Yeah. You would think everybody would meet each other, but often they don't. Wow.
Yeah. Unless you're on a film, if you're there for the whole schedule. And most people, even when they do, if they have the money, hell, they're flying themselves, or it's already negotiated. Most people don't stay on location for the entire.
How were the Farrelly brothers? Were they pretty open to improv, or did they want you to stick to their writing?
No, they were open. He was masturbating. Was a complete.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Next to Franks and Beans. And have you seen my baseball? That's the third most famous line. And that was the one it was in the scene where he zipped himself up in his pants.
Of course.
And the ambulance is bringing him out, and I'm following him, and I'm yelling, "He was masturbating!" And that was an improv. And
oh my God.
It was interesting.
Oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead. You got a question?
I wanted to ask you, would you mind, and you could say no, but could you do that voice and say Mouse and Wings and the Franken Beans? Too weird?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah. Don't do it. We'll cut this part out too, so you don't have to be uncomfortable.
It's weird with that. For the longest time, I would not do it. I wouldn't do the voice at all because people would want me as a party trick. And it felt uncomfortable to me again, it's a broad comedy. And in today's woke world, would that even get made? But, I've had comments made about me playing that role. That's in recent years. But I never wanted to feel like I was making fun of Warrentation.
Yeah, right.
The real Warren.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to become a party trick. And I was offered. There was one in particular. The movie ended up bombing, but it was to playing this mentally handicapped guy in a comedy, and I wouldn't do it. No, I'm not interested because I didn't want to repeat myself. I didn't want to get stuck in doing that, and I didn't want it to become a party trick either.
Yeah.
So 10 years or so ago, I sort of loosened up a little bit on that, but
There's a fine line with that. Yeah.
I signed up. I avoided it at first, but I have so many friends that are doing it. About 3 or 4 months ago, I got on Cameo because what the fuck else am I doing with my time? But that's the one thing I will not do it as a character. I still have the earmuffs. They're right over there.
Oh, I love it.
The earmuffs and I'll do Franks and Beans or something like that. But no, it's
no parody. That's good. And that was the other thing we were talking about is how you have not been typecast at all.
Yeah. Well, part of that is, I mean, the only power that you have as an actor, and everyone has it. The only power you have is to say no, you know, and so many people get so desperate that they will do absolutely anything to get their toe in the door. And I just, you know, it's a double-sided sword. And I naively thought when I started this, you know, 30 years ago, I thought, well, you do special work. If it does well, then special things come your way. That's the way it works. And then the first time I got billing was due to the goodness of Wes Craven, you know, oh, that's nice. And as I said, I'm not under any illusions. It didn't take Olivier to do what I did in Scream. A lot of people could do what I did in Scream. Not a lot of people could do what I did in Something About Mary, you know. So when Mary hits, and I'm like, all right, baby, here we go, buckle in. And then it was crickets. Yeah. That was, you know, taught me a lesson.
What is the lesson? Because it's just, that happens a lot to people. And what did you learn from that? Is it humility and faith?
You don't get anything that's not negotiated for you. Don't expect, you know, out of the goodness of their hearts that you're going to get anything. So the importance of your representation, the importance of your billing, the importance of all of that stuff that I used to didn't care about. I mean, yeah, I cared. You know, it's nice to see your face in a magazine or something like that, although magazines are a dying thing now. But I never could afford, like, hell, I only made $16,000 to do that movie. They paid me scale plus 10. So I couldn't have afforded, you know, at that point, 20 years ago, a publicist was $2,000 a month. So if I'd have had my own publicist, it would have taken every dime that I made to pay a publicist. But it wasn't that important to me. I've never had a publicist. I had for 3 months, David Milch hired somebody on this thing for Deadwood that I worked with. But I've never hired a publicist. Wow. So as I'm saying, the double-edged sword, the more famous you are, the more known you are, the easier it is to get work. The easier it is to get things funded. You know, I have things that I want to make. I did make a movie that I produced and I wrote.
We watched it, Bloodworth.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was awesome.
That just took so much out of me. But we got to make the movie that we wanted to make, and I'm proud of it. Yeah. But the more better known you are, the easier it is because money comes your way. Now, the flip side of that is the more you are known as a personality, the more difficult it is to disappear into the roles that you play. Yeah. You know, and I can think of very few actors, you know, Phil Hoffman being the prime example. That guy was a character actor. This guy who completely, you know, changed who he was in these characters.
Did you meet him in The Master?
No. No, I was only on Master for a couple of days, and I never crossed paths with Phil. Early in my career, there was a film that was called Joey Coyle that starred John Cusak. And Cusak was with that agency that I was with in Chicago. It's where he started. He was still with them. And there was a supporting role. The movie ended up getting released called Money for Nothing. It's not that great a film. But it was a supporting role. It was pretty significant. And they put me on tape for it in Chicago. And I was told, they're going to fly you out. They want to meet you. So I'm, you know, I've only been doing that for a couple of years. I'm like, they're going to fly me to Los Angeles? Like, they're going to pay for it? Yeah, they want you to meet with the. So I'm also excited. And then 2 days later, they found this guy in New York that they love. They're going to cast him. Sorry. And it was Phil. Wow. And that was the first time when I saw the movie, and then I started seeing him in other things, like I recognized who it was.
Yeah.
But that was one of the early points in my career that, you know, him and Farley.
Yeah.
You know, Second City, I thought that was my dream. And then Farley, it was down to me and Farley, and then Chris did it. And ironically, Chris was on the short list at Fox to play Warren in Something About Mary.
You're kidding.
No, and he passed away while we were doing it.
Oh my
I remember
gosh.
I got the news that night in my hotel room in Miami. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Now, was that your first true love was comedy, or do you have one genre that you like better than the other?
Well, I mean, that was I know I'm not the Lone Ranger in this, but I come from a dysfunctional family, and the men in the family, especially my mother's side, the ones I felt more kin to, were very comfortable in beating the shit out of each other and being angry. And comedy was a great mask, you know, telling a joke. And I was the insecure fat kid, you know, growing up. And that was my way. I was the fat funny guy. So it was always a mask. And then we didn't even have a theater department. In high school, we had a very successful high school speech and debate team, which is how I met my wife, because she was on it.
Oh, cute.
No, we had this incredible teacher, Larry England, who said, yeah, look, you're rural farm kids, and that there's nothing wrong with doing that. However, there's nothing that's impossible in life if you're willing to work for it. And so that was his philosophy. We were state champions 3 of our 4 years in speech and debate. Certainly not in football, because we sucked in football. I played that too. But it was I was the first in my family to go to college. And I went to Murray State, which is the local school. It's a school of like 10, 12,000 students. So it's a big college, but it was there, you know, in the county where I grew up. I had no clue what I was going to do. And I thought, I took an acting class on a whim, and then it was like a fish to water. So early on, it was all comedy. I'm talking about when I was young, when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And then I started doing drama in school, and the stage was a safe place, because that wasn't me. That's not me. That's a character that I'm playing. Yeah. That's, you know, so I wasn't aware of the mask. But no, if it's genuine, if you're finding truth, it absolutely is you. Mm-hmm. You know, Warren is me as much as Dan Dority from Deadwood is me.
Yeah.
So it took me several years to really recognize it. Of where that well was and how deep it ran. So yeah, comedy was my first thing. And I always think I had a sense of timing. You know, I was blessed with that skill, but it was the drama part that really changed my life, that changed me fundamentally.
Yeah. I want to circle back to that too when we ask about your movie Bloodworth, because a lot of the characters, I was wondering if there was some relation to your own family with that.
Yep.
But I want to go to Deadwood before we get to your movie. Are you good on time still?
I'm not doing anything.
I love it. Okay, perfect.
If I run out of water, I may have to go get some more water. But
yeah, feel free if you need to do that, or you need to.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. But so we had a lot of questions about Deadwood. Obviously, it is a brilliant show. You were amazing in it, and
rabid fans. There's
oh my gosh, so many fans that were asking such detailed questions.
And it's one of those series that people have watched 2
over
and 3, like The Sopranos. I mean, it's got that sort of depth and following.
Yeah,
and I still, because I worked on the writing staff seasons 2 and 3, so I was there for 99% of everything that's in it. I was there at its creation. And I was there when most of it was shot, even if I wasn't in the scene. But I can still watch it again and still pick up things, still pick up some nuance that I'd missed before. It's that good, and it holds up all these years later. Yes. So anyway, Deadwood, I'm very proud of it. Ask away, and I'm here with my Dan Dority pillow from the movie.
Oh my God, that's amazing!
Wait, was that the real guy? That's him?
No, that's me.
Oh,
from
that's
the movie.
you.
Oh my God, look at that.
We had a big, huge party, and they printed up all these character throw pillows in the lounge, and I absconded with 2 of them.
It doesn't look like you.
I know,
maybe the nose has got a wrinkle in it or something.
Yeah, you've aged in that film, yes. That is so. How was the okay? So first the series, and then we'll see about the movie. But so what was your favorite part of the film? Was it your big famous fight scene in that with Captain?
I mean, that's one of them. There are so many highlights in that whole thing.
Yeah.
That was one of them, yes. And that there again, to try to pinpoint just one is nearly impossible because things would happen. Just this spark. We all knew that we had something unique. We knew we had something no one had ever really seen before. We had an enormously talented group of people, and we believed in the story that we were telling, and we completely gave over to it. And you couldn't. And now it was not all hugs and butterfly kisses. There were days that people were at each other's throats. Yeah. And David could be a prickly pear. David Milch.
Oh, I've heard.
The genius behind it all.
Yeah.
But we were all committed to it with 100% of our souls. So I couldn't wait to get to work because you never knew what the hell was going to happen. And sometimes just the smallest little thing, smallest little seed would just explode and bloom into something that you weren't expecting. Yeah. And now that was when you followed the punctuation. It was so precise in its language. David wrote in meter. So you had to follow every syllable as it was written.
You mean like
iambic pentameter meter?
Like the song or something?
It is.
Oh, wow.
Pentameter, yeah.
That's amazing. How were you guys trained on how to do that, or did most people know?
Pretty much everybody on the show, with the exception of Tim. Tim's background was as an artist, fine art, as a painter. But pretty much everybody else had been had formal theater training and Shakespeare and classical stuff. So being comfortable with words falling trippingly off the tongue certainly helped. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was again, it's just a long litany of incredible moments that would happen, and then afterwards you would just
Yeah.
And psychologically, I remember one moment, it's at the end of season 1 where it's juxtaposed into this sheer brilliance of David Milch. When we murder the captain, or we murder the preacher,
yes,
a mercy killing, and then we murder Claggett up in Al's office. So it's 2 murders. And remember, they're cutting back and forth as the preacher. It's cutting back and forth to Doc, who's had this prayer to God.
Yes.
Did you need to see them suffer? Did you need? So all this building up to this crescendo. And I can remember being in Al's office where it comes in before we kill Claggett. And there's a scene where I'm sitting behind Al's desk and Claggett's right behind us, across the desk from me. And then Adams and Hawkeye are standing there behind him. You think they're his henchmen before they've come over and start working for us. And Al's in the scene. And there was just this primal, I mean, I know it's all pretend, it's all acting. There was a primal malevolence in that room that you really felt like, we could kill this motherfucker, and it wasn't until it was over that I really felt this, oh my God, it felt for me, and I wasn't the only one. You could feel it in the fucking room, like the devil was with us.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like a spirit came in the room with you or something.
Evil. Really evil. And again, I know it's pretend, we're actors, but it was, so that is a high water mark. Not necessarily a feeling good, because you think you want to go bathe in holy water once you've done that.
Yeah.
Did it ever psychologically mess with you because you're doing all those killings? Did you get to a point where you started questioning yourself, or have to do a little method acting on the side?
No. And I think that was part of what made the stage safe for me. I'm very much in touch with my own darkness, my own dark side. And learning that was the only way I learned to beat depression and anxiety. is to, and that goes back to Wes Craven. And it goes back to fucking Line and Scream. Movies don't make monsters. They make monsters more creative, or killers, or whatever. And that was Wes's whole thing of movies and art as a catharsis for the darkness that's within you. I just rewatched, and I hadn't seen it in years. I just rewatched The Last House on the Left. Oh my God, what a brutal, twisted movie. And how somebody that was that kind and sweet-natured as Wes was, like, how did that man even conceive of something that depraved?
And that was a remake too. Didn't he write the original in the 70s and then redid?
He wrote and directed the original in 1972.
Yeah. And
it was, I think he just got paid. I'm not sure how actively involved he was in the remake.
Okay.
In which Garrett Dillahunt from Deadwood played Krug in the remake. But I saw the original one. Anyway, but that was Wes's thing, and I agreed with it because I loved, as a kid, I loved Motorhead. I loved dark, heavy music, and I love dark, scary stories. And I think that's the way we deal with our fears. And going to see a scary movie, especially when the appeal is to teenagers, because you're just coming to terms with your own mortality. You're just, puberty brings you to the point of, oh, I'm going to die. Someday. So, safely watching these stories at a distance allows us to better deal with our own fears. And, somewhere down the line, I became comfortable with my own ugliness,
The dark side. Well, it plays into the podcast community too, because there's so many true crime podcasts and shows, but I did wonder, why is it so saturated? And that does make sense, and I tend to go the other way. I like the light and the happy and the comedy, and
I've got the dark.
Well, and then I popped out 3 kids, and 2 of my kids really like creepy dolls and the scary things, and they're going down that route. And so as a mom, I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. But maybe it's healthy to let them explore that. And
it is, because it's a safe way to confront your own primal fears. And it certainly was that for me. Now, hell, I was going to a hellfire and brimstone church that told me Kiss would send me to hell, so again, the stage was a place for me to come to terms with a lot of this stuff that had been ladled upon me in where and how I grew up. So yeah, the only way the only way I found happiness in my life was to be able to acknowledge the darkness within myself, and that way the darkness doesn't have power over you. That is Freddy Krueger. When you confront your fears, when you confront it face to face, it no longer has power over you.
Yeah,
true.
I always felt like acting in general, you have to put yourself, and I only did a little bit of it and then I went behind the scenes, but it feels like you have to face your fear, just stepping out in front of people and being vulnerable. And
I
then
think every art is that.
Yeah.
Every art is that. As an actor, your body is your instrument. So you don't have that remove of when you paint something on a canvas and then you put the canvas out there. Well, the canvas is what's showing the reflection. It's not you. Yeah. When you're doing live theater, it's just you and the audience, and there is an immense vulnerability to that. But I think the only true art comes from vulnerability, no matter how it expresses itself, whether it's on a canvas or whether it's on an instrument. So I think it all comes from the same place.
But being able, like you're talking about playing Dan Dority, being able to also control it, like letting it come out and getting really into it. But then also there's Earl Brown, who's able to not go that far, that you can, I mean, some people would go too far with their acting, where they hurt themselves or others. There
have been a few performances, a few films that really kind of got me, that affected me once, I was off camera, that took me a while to shed. Deadwood was so, I don't know, just the whole environment. I was able to take it off and put it on, in that show. But I worked on the damn thing again 7 days a week. I was always trying to dream up some story or something, and then going and working with Dave. So it kind of was my immersive life.
Wow. How did you write that freaking? It's so many storylines. How did you take it on and figure it out?
The process for me, it all started with, in the pilot, I improvised a line, which is a huge fucking no-no with David Milch. It's in the pilot when Bullock and Starr pull up on the wagon, and I say $5 a week payable to Mr. Swearingen at the gym, and Bullock says, "Where's that?" And I'm just supposed to say, "You'll find it," and turn and walk away. And in one take, I go, "You'll find it." Everybody does. And it cut. Milch comes walking over to me, and he goes, "Well, I guess I'm going to have to call WGA." I said, "What?" He goes, "Get an adjudication over who wrote this fucking thing, me or you. What the fuck did you say?" And I'm thinking, you'll find it. Everybody does. And he kind of ponders. He says, "Script." He brings a script supervisor over. He goes, "Tell her what you said. Write this down. Never quote me on it because I'll deny it. But that turn of phrase works. That works." He walks off. So way later in the season, he comes up to me, and I'd realized early, if something wasn't quite trippingly off the tongue, he would be open to discussions if sometimes he was in a dark place and you just avoided him. But you could go to Dave and go, "Hey, how about if we," and he would listen and sometimes make adjustments, sometimes not. But I don't know what particular thing I had said or done was the impetus for this. But he come up to me one day and he goes, "Do you write?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Actually, I have something I want you to read. Come with me to the trailer." So he takes me, and he had done a 5-hour lecture at Yale, because he used to be the chair of the English department at Yale. But he had done a long lecture about his theory of writing. And it was transcribed exactly the way he speaks, with all the vocalized pauses and the ahs and the ums. And it was about that thick. And he gave it to me, and I read it here in this room. So I go to work. I read it over the weekend. I go back to work. And he goes, "Did you read that thing I gave you?" I said, "Yeah." "You read it?" I said, "Yeah, I fucking read it." "Yes." And he said, "All right, well, it's my turn. I want to see something you've done." So I gave him a short story first. The next day, he comes up to me. He's got it. He'd read it. He said, "That's got promise. You've written a script." And I had just written the first draft of what became Bloodworth. It's an adaptation of a book, Provinces of Night. And I had just dissected the book and put it in 3-act form and whatnot. And I did kind of want his feedback on it. And I said, "Yeah, it's a first draft of this adaptation. But yeah," he goes, "Let me see it." So I give it to him. About 3 or 4 days later, he comes back with my script, hands it to me, and he goes, "It's obvious you can write. Next season, I want you to come to the writer's trailer. I want you to join us."
I just got chills for you. Whoops.
Well, I was intimidated. Like, David's a genius. I've never met anybody like him. I've met a few people that have the level of intellect that he does, but it's almost invariably that there's this disconnect, emotional disconnect, like an Asperger's or something, because that part of their brain is so dominant. The intellect is that the emotional, and Dave's emotional intellect is as gargantuan as his intellect. David has this innate ability to just understand a person. Like, he can see through you, and he sees all the cracks, and Dave being Dave, he wants to fix those cracks in your soul. So now, and I've said this before, don't fall into the illusion of him as some sort of sandals and bead wearing guru, because Dave was, he was a heroin addict for many years, an alcoholic, who lived life. He had a danger streak in him a mile wide, and a lot of people got burned by it. So David was a very, very complicated man. And it wasn't till it was Steve Earle, the singer-songwriter, who we all had breakfast. And I knew those two guys are so much alike that they would either repel each other or bond, because they were both heroin addicts for years, both genius minds. You know, Steve is a high school dropout and David has the finest education anyone could ever get. But within 5 minutes, they're sharing junkie stories, you know, and they hit it off. And it was Steve. We were in my pickup truck leaving that breakfast, and he goes, "Didn't you say he gave you a chance to write?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You gonna do it?" And I said, "Well, I was hemming and hawing." And he goes, "Well, if you don't, you're a fucking idiot, because that's a writer's writer, man. You don't meet people like that very often in this world." I met Townes Van Zandt when I was 17 years old, and I knew that man can teach me. That man can teach you if you get off your goddamn horse and do it. So that was the prodding that I needed.
Wow, that was enough.
To go and walk in the door, hat in hand, and go, "All right, I'm here." So the process, that's a very long answer to tell you what the process was. You would come up with story ideas either from history or from your imagination, and go to David, go, "Hey, Dave, I got this idea." Lay it out. "All right, what else do you have?" "Well, that has promise." "Yeah, go ahead, go out and write an arc on that. See where that story could go, and write 3 scenes. Let's see scene-wise, dramatically, how it would." So you'd go away and you'd do that, and you give it back to Dave. And my favorite, I remember this very well, standing right outside the main sound stage. I had 3 things that I'd written, each stapled together and printed here. I handed them to him, and the first one picks it up. "That's absolute shit."
Oh
Yeah.
no.
And then he's looking at the second, goes, "This has promise. This has got promise." So that was Dave, you know.
Oh my God.
But you kept going. You didn't take that as
Yeah.
an insult. You just kept working with him.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I felt like I got paid to sit at the feet of Aristotle, you know, and he and Wes Craven have been like 2 of my life's great teachers, and the 2 that I've met in my career in show business. Just this very bright men that are just spiritually in tune with some higher frequency. So yeah, those have been my 2 greatest. I was just, you know, thinking about Wes recently. I wrote something that was heavily influenced by him. And then Dave, I had lunch with Dave right before COVID hit. He has Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And he's living in an assisted facility. And I went to have lunch with him, and he said to me, we sat down at the table. There's a restaurant in it's for retired people, and then the top floor people with cognizant decline. And so he was having a good day when I was there. But we sit down in the restaurant, and, you know, people in the later stages of life, and Dave leans into me and he says, "I have to tell you, Earl, the indignities of decrepitude are boundless." You know,
He managed to pull that
way.
out. Wow.
Yeah. The indignities of decrepitude are boundless. So anyway, that's yeah, I would not take anything for those 4 years spent, or 3 seasons, but 4 years total that we were creating that story.
Oh. So why did they cancel it? I had read something about you going to a party and meeting with one of the execs who said that was a huge mistake, right? It was a huge mistake.
Yeah, he said that in the book. He didn't say it to me at that party.
Okay.
The guy that ran the network, he was a comedy guy. He was never drama wasn't his thing, and we were developed under the regime before him, so we were never a favored son. Deadwood, meaning the show, and they were expecting us to become Sopranos, and the irony is we were on track to become Sopranos because they didn't become the water cooler show till their 3rd season. So we had all of that momentum building up, and looking back, there was writing on the wall I just didn't recognize. Chris bumped us from our premiere date in March. He bumped us, and that happened in November, and that took us out of Emmy contention because we weren't on air in time. So all of that shit's momentum, you know, all of that, the awards and all that stuff, one thing feeds the other, and it's a snowball. And so, Chris, it wasn't until, you know, the fact that, I don't know where you stumbled on, I guess I have told that story about walking into the Emmy party or the Oscar party and first fucking person I run into was him.
Mm.
Because I blamed him for what happened. And that was only a year after the show had been unceremoniously killed off. There was a book called Difficult Men, which was about the second golden age of television, and about David Milch and David Chase and all those great shows, Breaking Bad and Sopranos and The Wire, David Simon. And there's a whole chapter devoted to Deadwood and Milch. And in it, Chris says, he said that was my mistake. That was my biggest mistake. And he explained himself more. And he said it was a negotiating ploy. I needed to cut down the costs. I needed to get the production reined in under control. And we were out of control expensive. They still made money. That's the thing. They were still making money.
Yeah.
But a lot of backstage politics. Paramount had a housekeeping deal with David, so they owned the rights outside of North America, but they weren't putting in any production funds, no overages or anything. So that was a bee in the bonnet or a burr under the saddle.
Yeah.
And there was a myriad of things went into him making that. And again, he said it was my beginning of a negotiation, and then David just went off the rails and called everybody and said the show was canceled. So yeah, I guess there's blame to go all around. But
where was the money? Because every costume, every background person had on beautiful outfits. Where was the majority of the money? Was it mostly shot at Melody Ranch?
Yeah, we were
on
all
location.
We hardly ever left. We left when the very beginning, when I throw Brom Garrett off the mountain. I throw him off the mountain at Angel's Crest, and I crack his skull in Pine Mountain. We were two different locations. Or vice versa, I'm sorry. Threw him off of Pine Mountain, cracked his skull there. We had the gold mine set and the cemetery set were off. They were up at Pine Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
did you know Brian Haynes pretty well too, the location manager on that?
Oh yeah, I remember him. Yes.
Yeah, I worked with him a few times. He recently passed from cancer too, a couple years ago. But he was on the whole show too, and he said it was the best job he's ever had in his life, and he's
every single person involved felt that.
Yeah.
And that's why having the movie, being able to have a final chapter to somewhat on our own terms, to be able to say hello and goodbye to those people that you shared such an intimate part of your life with and you're forever bonded to. Seeing Dave's decline. I had not seen him in person in been about a year and a half before we started production. And he knew then, he was diagnosed then when I had lunch with him, and he was having real memory problems. But the physical depletion was difficult. But it was a blessing to be able to say hello and goodbye, because I couldn't let it go before. I could not come to terms with the way things happened, to give so much of yourself. And I'm not the Lone Ranger in that. Everybody did, and everybody felt that way. And for us to get cut off at the knees, as I said earlier, for it to stop. It didn't end, it stopped. So it was a blessing to make that movie.
Yay!
All my shit got cut out of it.
No. Who did that? Oh.
A lot of stuff got cut out. But
thank God they did the movie, though. That gives people some peace and some closure. Well,
there's a great lyric by Ray Wiley Hubbard that I try to live my life by. And it sounds so simple, and I'd never heard it phrased that way till I heard Ray sing it in the song Mother Blues. Every day that my gratitude is higher than my expectation, I have a good day. So
I love that.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I haven't heard that, but it does feel like that is the counter to, I think it was also like a famous quote of man's greatest downfall is his expectation. It was like Kierkegaard or something, and it's true. Mm-hmm. And if you just kind of put that gratitude in the beginning of the day.
That's good.
Okay, now, couple of questions for the people that would kill me. All of the fans that wrote in about Deadwood first of all, what is the goo or gel that you smear all over yourself?
That was my question.
That was
what was the fight scene and the goo and the gel?
Bear grease. We went out and killed a bear, boiled off the fat. We was all thick.
So wait, is that so the punches slip off you? Is this like the boxers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, boxers use Vaseline.
Yeah,
That's why you
okay.
stick Vaseline them in the corners so the glove won't grab skin. Because see, that's how your skin gets torn when you get punched. The skin tears.
Right.
But if so, they would grease up in a big fight like that. What it actually was KY jelly, and I forget what else he put in, like bits and pieces of stuff to look like fat, but it's primarily jelly.
And you got down with that KY jelly too. You went there with it also, huh?
All of it. I was well greased.
Because you don't know where they're going to grab. That was good. And I thought you were going to come out with your haircut after he made that comment, like, oh, you are at a disadvantage with that hair, but they kept your hair. I was glad.
Well, there's one that second scene, and this is an example of talking to David. And it's the only example where David did not rely on, he let the image overrule the written word. The scene afterwards with Johnny Burns after that fight was a scene. It was written. It was like 3 pages between me and Johnny, where I don't want to leave the room. I don't want to see Al, and he's trying to convince me. And I said, David, I said, I think it would be stronger if I don't say anything. And if I'm naked, like if you just see the damage of his body, you see the cuts and the scrapes and the bruising that's starting, and he can't speak. I think that would be more powerful. And that was when Dave says, yeah, Dad, let me think about that. And then he came back with a half hour later, he had rewritten it. Because we were starting to, I want to say that was written the day of, because I remember, not that I clamor to be naked, nor is anyone clamoring to see me naked.
It was powerful, though.
Yeah, no, it's just an incredibly powerful image. Because he's there by that lamplight in a dark room, and this guy who you've just seen, pull the eyeball out of another human being and then crack his skull open. Kill somebody with his bare hands. And then that's what led Dave, I can't remember if it was written, a rough draft before, but that whole speech that Al has, that's what happens when you kill a man, up close, and you see the light go out of their eyes. I can't even give it justice to try to quote it. But yeah, that's what it was. It took so much out of Dan. And it was also the time, the closest he'd ever gotten to dying, because he was one breath away from death. And through a mere twist of fate, he found an eyeball. Yeah. And that comes from a true story. I don't know if you want to hear that. Well, people about the fight. All right.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Well, I had written in season 2, my grandfather, my mother's dad, would not allow anybody to call him son of a bitch. Because don't you allow that, because that's defaming my mama. And nobody defamed my mama. This was a man who was very violent. And I told my mother what he had said. This was back when he was still alive. And mother, she goes, well, that was ironic, because if there was ever a bitch that walked the planet, it was my grandmother. That woman was evil. Which went a long way to explaining why my grandfather was the way he was. But my mother's first husband had abandoned he got my mother pregnant. She had a child at 16 years old, my sister, and he was 27, and he abandoned them. My mother went back to high school. She was her class salutatorian, and as a single mother, she had tried to go to college. She wanted to, but she couldn't. It's a long story. My mother made a great success of her life, and she did it herself. So you can say I'm drawn to strong women, and Freud can work on that one. But her first husband, he had abandoned my sister. They were living back home with my grandparents. My uncle, who was 9 years old, witnessed it. They were at the local filling station, and her ex-husband pulled up, and he's getting beer to ice down ice down his beer, out driving around drinking. And my grandfather said, Loman, we need to talk. They go around back. He says, you got a daughter. You don't want to be a daddy. That's obvious, but there's diapers, there's food. You're going to pay for that. Turns to walk away, and Loman says, yeah, you better walk away, you son of a bitch. My uncle said, he goes, Daddy turned, and he always taught me how to hit because he was a big man. And he said he hit Loman so hard, Loman's eyeball popped out. He goes, Loman fell to his knees, And he goes, his eyeball is literally dangling on his cheek. And he said, and he fell over on his side. He was by a coal pile. And he said, first of all, Granddaddy starts stomping him with his boots. And then he grabs a chunk of coal and he's about to crack his head open. My grandfather, I saw it. I witnessed it 3 times in my life. And I don't doubt his pupils would dilate. His eyes would go black. And that's when I say that scene that was so fucking felt that. I'm sure some of that blackness had seeped through my jeans. You know, his pupils would dilate. And Gerald said, I saw his eyes and I knew he was going to kill him. And he 9 years old, he goes, I go running up. He's got the chunk of coal above his head. He's about to brain him. And he said, I grab him by the chest and I'm pleading with him, Daddy, stop, Daddy, stop. So I wrote that and called it Son of a Bitch, that Soapy the soap seller, bar soap, $5 inside, bar soap, that he's pulling the scam inside the Gem Saloon. And I toss him and he calls me a son of a bitch. And I wrote exactly what happened in my family. Well, we never used it. Wow. And I had called it story segment, Son of a Bitch. So when it rolls around to the fight in season 3, David had brought us together, me, Al Graff, who played captain, Mike Watson, the stunt coordinator, and Dan Minahan, the director. And he said, because it's just written, it says, Dan and captain fight to the death. At the last minute, when you think Dan's going to die, he's victorious. That's all it said. And he said, you have 3 days to make up a fight. He said, I have 3 rules. Number 1, I want everything realistic. I don't want any big cowboy roundhouses flying through plate glass, none of that bullshit. Number 2, I want I don't want the audience to be able to draw their breath. Every time they think it's going to ebb, I want it to escalate. I want 5 minutes of increasing tension and violence. And number 3, I want something I ain't ever seen before. So you guys make it up. So we had 3 days to rehearse, create it, and we had 2 days to shoot it. So David would come in at the end of every day and watch what we had done. And we tried a bunch of different things. And Dan Minahan was the one, he said, I want to use the meat market. We've never been in it. And you guys in amongst the raw meat and blood is a great image. And I had suggested the drowning in horse piss. I said, these are like 2 cavemen, beating themselves. And he's trying to drown me in this mud and piss. And so we tried this, tried that. So David, at the end of the second day, we don't have an ending yet. We've marked through everything that we've done. And Dave said, I don't know how the fuck we're going to get out of this. He goes, I went back to that son of a bitch thing that you wrote. And I was thinking but that's, he's killing you. He's overpowering you. There was I will not use the name, but he was an advisor on the show who used to be an enforcer in Vegas. And his thing was to take people's eyeballs out. He would hold them down. He was a huge man. He'd use his thumb, put it by the bridge of their nose, and pop an eyeball. So Milch says, he said, I looked at your son of a bitch thing, and then, what's his name? He said, I was thinking about, with him, but that's not going to work either because of, you're dying. You're being overpowered. I don't know how we're going to get out of this fucking thing. So I played poker with Jerry Cantrell, the musician, Alice in Chains, the hard rock band. Well, Jerry's one of my close friends. And I play cards at his house, and he was big into Deadwood. That's how we met. He was a Deadwood freak. I was an Alice freak.
And you guys did Dad Rock together too? Dad Band, yes.
Yeah. But it was at his house playing poker. I told him about what we were doing, and I told him about Son of a Bitch. I told him, and he goes, that happened to my brother Dave. I said, what? He goes, Dave was in a biker bar in Oklahoma. He got in a fight. And he goes, this guy had him on the pool table. He had him by the ears. And he was a straddle of him on the table. And he's cracking his head against the slate, the edge of the pool table. And he said, Dave thought he was going to die. He goes, he was getting tunnel vision, like the lights are going out. And he said he was just trying to push the guy off of him. And he felt his ring finger. He couldn't see it, but he felt his ring finger hit something soft and squishy. And he knew it's an eyeball. And he jammed his finger into this guy's skull and pulled his eye out and saved his life. So I go to work the next day and I go, David, I got an ending. So I lay out the David Cantrell, Oklahoma biker story. That works. Hey, effects, can we get a dangling eyeball? Yeah. Okay, yeah, make an eyeball. It's dangling. So we're leading up to shooting it. And Al Graff, who was playing the captain, who played in the NFL, who was a tough son of a bitch. Our other guy, the other advisor, also named Al, was there that day, the enforcer. And Graff says, what would happen? Like if the eyeball's out? I said, well, the capillaries would all burst. Your good eye would probably be flooded with blood. If your optic nerve's still there, the eye bouncing could probably still see.
Oh
and well, I see the advisor down the way. I went, I'll get an answer. So I go jogging down there and I go, I got a question. What happens when somebody loses their eyeball? And this old man, he's leaned up against the post. And I ask him and he goes, they scream.
Oh.
They scream a lot.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. I felt that chill down my spine of like, oh shit.
And down your optic nerve?
This is not pretend. This is a guy who has literally held people down and taken eyeballs out of their skull. He's probably dug holes in the desert. Oh shit, this ain't pretend.
Yeah.
So I go back down and Kraft goes, yo, what did he say? So just scream a lot. Just scream.
And that's what was in the scene is him just screaming over and over again.
Yeah.
It's chilling.
That scene is, I mean, the ebbs and flows were there. I mean, when you're face down in that puddle, I'm like, this is it. My heart is beating, edge of your seat. If anyone hasn't said, it's season 2?
Season 3, episode 5.
Okay.
Yeah. You notice the coup de grace is not shown. It's off screen. You hear me split his skull open. You hear the watermelons crack open, but you don't see it.
I'm very glad you didn't show that. Whoever decided that, it was too much at that point.
Well, David wanted to see the impact on its Swearingen and Hearst. He wanted to see it on them, and I saw that. Now that's funny. I had my ultimate. The first time I saw that, Dusty and Billy of ZZ Top. I invited them. They were heroes. I still have one of my posters from 1970s of those guys. They were one of my favorite bands, and I got to know them. And so I invited Dusty. Was huge into Deadwood, so they're going to come out and play cowboy with us. They're going to be Hawkeye's Guns. Their first day on set, Milch kind of knew who they were. You know, he's not a music fan, but he knew, and everybody's like, oh my God, ZZ Top's going to be here. Well, David, I introduced him, and he goes, I have something to show you fellas. Earl, you're going to want to see this. Come to me. And it was in the editing room, and it was the first edit of that fight. So I not only got to create that, I got to watch it with my rock and roll heroes, you know, in the editing room. So
you have arrived when that kind of stuff happens. You're like, you know, if I die today.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so I'm going to segue into another question from Phil Rude, who's a super fan. The character of Dan in Deadwood could have easily been made an anonymous goon, but you managed to really make him memorable and a kind of complicated character who's a mix of charismatic and dangerous and a fully realized person. How much of the character was developed by you as opposed to being on the page?
Well, when it first came about, I was sent the script, and Dority, there's only 3 or 4 lines in the pilot. And I said, it's the thug in the shadows. I had committed to doing Steve Earle's play in Nashville. He'd written a play, a theater play. And I had committed to being in it. And this rolled around, and I read it, and I said to my agent, I said, you know, I don't want to be the thug in the shadows for 7 years. I said, Jack McCall, that's kind of showy. Because it's only 4 episodes, and he gets killed. I said, I don't give a shit. I'd rather play that than be stuck as the thug. So I go, and I knew the casting directors. I'd worked with them before. And Libby comes out, and she goes, you got Dority. I said, yeah, but I want to read McCall. She goes, okay. Do you have both of them? Can we do both of them? I said, yeah, we can do both of them. So I go in, we do McCall, and Dave kind of looks at her. Walter Hill was there at that point. He was still involved. And she goes, oh, no, we're doing Dority. We're doing Dority also. So we do the Dority scene, and I can see Dave kind of perk up on the couch. So we get through it, And he leans forward and goes, all right, we're going to do this again. Now, I want you to think about this. And he goes through every single word. There's a specific reason why I said everything I said it. There's a specific reason why it's phrased that way. There's subtext all as he's explaining all of this. It hits me like, oh my God, this guy doesn't write thugs and shadows. This guy brings complexity to everything. Now, I had guest starred on NYPD Blue, so I'd already had just a little snippet of the craziness of Milch. But it was there in the room where I got excited of like, oh my God, this. So David took who, as I said, he could see through you. So I think a big part of Dority was me, but filtered through Dave, so it was a creation of both of us, as all those characters were. Right. Because again, David was able to use who you are as a person. He could see the shadows and he could see the light, and he was able to paint with both of them.
Wow, that's right. So I'm sure he gave you more lines and more as he, yeah.
There were things would happen. There was a personal issue that another actor was having that I was privy to, and no one else was. And there was frustration due to and I just pulled Dave aside and I said, hey, I didn't give away any secrets, but that was the point. This was in the first season. That's the point Dority became so loyal. So it was literally just me taking up for a fellow castmate, trying to go, you need to cut this guy some slack. And so David kind of enveloped that into Dan going on down the line, So yeah, he EB sweaty palms. That's all Billy Sanderson, because Billy would get nervous and his palms would start to sweat.
Wow. How was it with Ian McShane? Did you end up becoming protective of him as a person, or what was your guys' dynamic?
Just pretty much ended up resulting like it was on the show.
Wow.
Hang on just a second. I'm asking my daughter to bring water out.
Oh, yeah. Do we need to, because this recording's a 2-hour.
Yeah, I'll look at that too. Make sure my plug doesn't come out.
Okay. Yeah, Ian and I, we kept up. We would have about twice a year, we would have breakfast over near his place. He lives in Venice Beach, lives there in London. But we would have our Deadwood breakfasts, for which he would invite, and I was inevitably there as part of every one of them. Yeah, our relationship really kind of unfolded like Al and Dan's.
That's amazing. And he was sober, right? Because I read that, isn't he and Milch both? And there was so much booze in all the scenes. I just wonder if anyone had...
Ironically, Ian knew Lemmy Kilmister from London because they used to drink at the same pub.
Oh, funny.
Ian got sober back in the 80s and had been sober, is sober ever since. But yes. And David, I think David got sober before Deadwood. He got off the drugs, but he said, I was going to, said I'm going to exercise. That was good. Doctor said I need good exercise. He said I started running, and that fucking hurts when you're old. And you know what takes away the hurt? Vicodin. And you know what washes Vicodin down really good? Vodka. They go good together. So David was then hooked on Vicodin, and so I think before Deadwood, David was off illicit substances, shall we say?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about David's sobriety. I don't know if he was ever part of,
program or something
of the Anonymous or not. I know Ian, but yeah.
Yeah. I just wondered because watching the show, it's just so you guys are drinking all the time.
Yeah. Well, their water was bad, so they couldn't really trust water. Wow. So yeah, that was a reason. That was another reason they drank so much alcohol, is because unless you had a fresh spring, and you get a bunch of people living together like that, you got a lot of sewage in your creek.
Right. Oh my gosh. There's things you think about. I read a little bit, on Wikipedia just about the town itself, and the history of that place is incredible. And did you do a lot of research before, like, of the town? And
Yes, I went there. I went several times, but I went there before we ever started. actually may have been at the end of my first year. John Hawkes had gone before we started production. And then after our first year, I went. There's a great museum there, the Adams House Museum, which David had used, with his initial research. And I went and spent a lot of time there. Jerry Bryant is local historian who's passed away. He gave, he knew every story. And he took me in his golf cart to all these places up in the hills where stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I love visiting there. I love going that place.
Wow. Well, you're a country boy at heart too, right? Would you say? Yeah.
That's cool. Were the scenes crazy? I mean, shooting at night, all that mud, was it just dirty and icky all the time?
It was. My wife has said this too. She says people going to a night shoot there was almost like stepping back in time, because the lights, you can't see the hillside and the homes that were there, because it's in a residential area. It's a 10-acre lot, and it's been developed the rest of the valley. So you're driving through, suburbia of big houses and horses, and then you're at Melody Ranch. But at nighttime, when we just had, our little segment lit, it was a magical time. It was a magical experience.
That's cool. And crazy hours? Were you there around the clock?
Yeah.
Or yeah, I could imagine.
Did you just sleep there a lot? I would think so.
I never spent the night there. It was, for me, driving home is about a 20-minute drive.
Yeah.
So there were some people that did, who lived like on the west side or something, but I just drive home.
I worked on the Westward World pilot, and we were right by the set there, and they used some of the set, and all anybody talked about was Deadwood at Melody Ranch the whole time.
Yep.
So, okay. Did you want to ask any more here? I think we knocked out so many of those. Hawaiian Cowboy.
Oh yeah, I heard your story on another recording of sitting down with all the musicians that you brought onto Deadwood, because you're that guy, right? All connected. And that they played the Hawaiian Cowboy song. One of the co-actors of yours, right? Keone?
Keone. Yes.
Yeah.
Keone grew up in Hawaii.
Okay.
His family, Japanese ancestry, but his grandparents, I think, came to Hawaii.
Okay.
And he grew up in Hawaii. And it was when Jason Isbell came out on the movie, and we were sitting there playing, and I think we just played Long Black Veil, which is a 3/4. And Keone goes, play the same chord, same repetition, and then keep playing. And then he starts singing Hawaii Cowboy. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I looked it up. I was like, what is the song Hawaiian Cowboy? I'm not a country fan necessarily, but I'm like, I need to kind of know what he's talking about. So I looked it up. It turns out that was my first boyfriend, who I lost my virginity to. That's his grandfather wrote that song, Saul K. Bright, in Hawaii. Yeah. And he used to talk about him all the time. Oh yeah, Saul Bright, Saul K. Bright. I'm like, who's this guy, Saul K. Bright? And there you go. That's the connection. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Brought back a lot of memories for you.
I guess, yeah. Don't tell my husband, but
That's funny.
Yeah.
Now can I talk about Bloodworth? How do you, we watched it. It's amazing. It seemed like it was hard. Do you want to talk about kind of the inception of the idea, and how do you get funding to do it?
Yeah, well, we were doing Deadwood. My wife had interviewed William Gay for a project she was working on. And that's how I first got to know William.
And he's the author of the book?
Yeah, he wrote the book, Provinces of Night. And I said, that was my Catcher in the Rye. When I read Catcher in the Rye, I was 20. I wasn't a teenager anymore. But Holden Caulfield just seemed like an asshole to me. I didn't. Yeah, he was just
a lot of serial killers thought so too, who ended up following him.
Yeah. And when I read Provinces of Night, like, oh my God, I found my Holden Caulfield. It's Fleming Bloodworth. The kid that's the main character in that book, which is really a loosely autobiographical story of William himself. So Shane Taylor, I had seen his first movie. He's from Kentucky, and I had met him. Super nice guy. He worked for ESPN for years. He'd always wanted to be a film director, and he'd made a little homemade movie. And I really liked him, and I kept putting it off. It's shot in my hometown in Murray, Kentucky.
Oh.
because it's set in the illegal cockfighting world. And there was a huge cockfighting arena, illegal as hell. But there was a breeding farm and an arena that was in my county. He found it and got access to it, hence they shot there. And people at home said, hey, man, they shot a movie here last summer. I'm like, oh, no, they shot a movie. There's people here from Hollywood. They shot a movie here. I never heard of it. So I ended up meeting Shane, super nice guy. And he was inviting me to watch the movie. And I kept putting it off because I'm like, it's going to suck. He's only got 3 professional actors. It's mostly local people. Long story short, I couldn't avoid it. I finally saw it. It was phenomenal for a little no-budget film. So I approached him. I said, hey, man, I love this book. Take a look at – so he was still working for ESPN there, and he was flying to New York. And he had read about half of it by the time he landed. He called me as soon as they landed. He goes, we've got to get the rights. I want to do this. So it took us that would have been 2003. We were set up to go in 2006. We'd gotten funding. And we were in pre-production. In a 12-hour span of time, Deadwood was canceled, and we lost the money of the film. So I go in 12 hours from I'm a writer, supporting actor on Best Show on Television. I've got my first movie in pre-production at a $5 million budget. I'm riding high. 12 hours later, nothing. So we had to recoup. It took us 3 more years to kind of get all the horses back in the barn. We had a third partner who, let's put it delicately and say he was a lot of big talk. He was all hat, no cattle. And we got a really bad feeling about, I have water coming. Excuse me. Thank you.
Sorry, I was eating lunch.
So we parted companies with him. We had to come up with long and sordid story. I got far more involved in financing than I ever thought I wanted to be. I had to work for $1. I had to work for nothing. I had to reinvest all the monies. We were paying ourselves union minimums, and paying ourselves $1 as producers. We were forced by our major investor to reinvest all funds. So I worked for 14 months for nothing.
Wow.
But we got to make the film that we wanted to make. We sold it. We got distribution on it. I've told Shane, we discussed this several times. If I had, because that was tough, man, because I was broke. And at the end of the shoot, I got walking pneumonia from so much fucking worry, and I wasn't sleeping. And then that role was screwed with my head anyway. And I didn't write that to be me. I offered it to John C. Reilly. I went to school with John.
Wow.
And I offered Reilly because I knew we had Christopherson, and I knew Reilly was a big music nut. So Reilly at the last minute turned it down. So I was kind of the guy on the bench. I told Shane, I'll play whatever if we have to, you know. But having Val Kilmer on board justified our budget. So
can you talk? So I don't. For the people who've not heard about this movie, it's called Bloodworth, and your main actors, you were one of them. You had Val Kilmer, Chris Christopherson,
Dwight Yoakam,
Hilary
Francis
Duff.
Conroy, and Hilary Duff, and Reese Thompson.
And also the woman from 6 Feet Under. I can't recall her name.
Francis Conroy.
Okay, yeah, she was great.
Who is phenomenal. And she is
good.
a phenomenal human being.
This movie was amazing. Can you give us just a little premise of it?
It's the story of this teenager from a very poor rural Appalachian area whose father has abandoned. His mother left him, and then his father's left. And it's family dysfunction. His father and his 2 uncles have been screwed up their entire lives because their dad abandoned them when they were little boys. So they grew up without a father, none of them knowing how to be a father. And ironically, you know, Dwight Yoakam's character has this grandson. So the grandfather shows back up in their lives. That's Chris Christopherson. What it is he's dying, and he has to come to terms with his life. Now, there's a great dark secret in his past that I had to change somewhat from the book, because the book was a definite period piece in the 1940s. And it was an attempted murder of a law officer, but he got away with it, and he ran away. And I'm thinking, because we wanted a timeless feeling, but it's still somewhat contemporary. So I thought there's no way he's going to get away with unless he murdered the guy. If he killed him and did away with the body and nobody ever found the body and it was a cop that deserved killing, that everybody hated. So that I changed that element. So that was it. He had committed this murder and he told himself, I'm leaving my family behind because the wrath of the devil's coming down on us and I'm protecting them. Right. But as the one son said to him, yeah, you left us standing on that porch, but you took your goddamn guitar.
Yeah.
So he spent his life going around chasing a song, staying drunk, chasing women, playing music. Wow. And so he's faced with his own death and he shows back up. So this grandson has this grandfather suddenly back in his life that he's never known. And he's never had a real father figure. And suddenly he has one. And then tragedy ensues because the sons all hate their father. And it just leads to a denouement that's a great tragedy, but it's actually uplifting if you get to the end with, the lessons that the kid learned.
It was great. It had just the right amount of mystery and violence and sex and family and romance too. It was great. I liked it.
And it's like in the part, which I want to tie back to you, we've all got father issues, or most of us, or a lot of us, and they all did in your move. But did you pull from your own story, or your character was probably the hardest to play, I would imagine. You were angry.
There was a great line in the novel that described that character to a T. I couldn't really use it in the script. There was no place. It was so poetic, it wouldn't have felt right tripping off the tongue of one of the characters. But William wrote, childhood polio left him with a gnarled left leg, but further twisted in ways invisible to the human eye. Childhood polio had left him with a gnarled left leg, but further twisted in ways not visible to the human eye. So that was it. So he had created his own belief system of fundamentalist religion and voodoo, and he thought he controlled. He was insane. And there were snippets of that. I forget, we did a re-edit on it. And I think you do briefly get this of him sitting there at the grave of his father, where he's just completely lost sense of reality. But yeah, he was on the slippery edge, and he was a mean fucker too.
Yeah, but then almost righteous because he was left to take care of his mom. So he had that side of him too.
Yeah. But that sense of the chip on his shoulder, because his grandson, his nephew, gets published. That he wants to be a writer. He knows writing is the only way he can deal with this. All of these ghosts that are in his head and around him, if he can write about them, if he can get them on a page, that controls them. And Brady, the character I played, was threatened by that, and he was somebody, because he holds up that magazine. When he finds out the magazine the kid's been published in Young Voices of the South, this you? And the kid's proud, and then he rips the magazine up right in front of him. So it's that, there was this getting above my raisins, was the mentality of folks back home, getting above your raising, thinking you're better than where you came from. And, my dad and I did not have that kind of a contentious relationship. It was a complicated relationship, but it wasn't like that. I think I mostly drew on my grandfather, the eyeball story, him and my uncle's relationship, because that's exactly what it was. They were so much alike. I witnessed them try to beat each other to death once as a kid.
That stays with you.
A lot of violence. Yeah.
Wow. Did they support you, your family, as an actor, or how did they feel about that?
Yeah. It was, my grandfather he was still alive when I got accepted into the graduate program at theater school. And I decided I'm moving to Chicago. I'm going to pursue this. At first, because getting in was a big deal, because there were hundreds of people that auditioned and only a handful got in. But then my old man was like, oh, hell, you're going to be going to college till you're 40. You're going to be one of them, And so it wasn't all about it. And I had driven the summer of 1985, the summer before, I had driven for 6 weeks, I drove to Chicago every weekend to take classes at the Second City with Don DePolo. That was an 840-mile trip every weekend. That's how committed I was. I meant it. But it was my grandfather who had buried my grandmother and was just waiting around to dig his own hole. I mean, literally, he said, we should have dug 2 holes, son. But he was sitting there in the farmhouse. And I went over and I told him, I said, I'm going to do this. I said, don't you have 2 cents to put in like everybody does? And he said, well, ever since you was a little bitty boy, everything you said that you was going to do, you did it. So I ain't got no doubt you'll do this too. So that was kind of the final blessing. Like that was the final string to cut that, all right, I can let this go and move forward. And then he died. He died that January.
Wow.
So yeah, so I drew on that completely. Because him and my uncle were too much alike.
Wow.
And you were the boy that broke the curse a little bit. You got out of there. And
I was Flint.
Yeah, you were.
That's what I was thinking.
You
Yeah.
connected. You were the kid that did what you said you were going to do.
I love that.
That's cool.
And my uncle was quite a bit of him was the Val Kilmer character in that movie. You know, he didn't impregnate my teenage girlfriend.
Well, I was going to say, I hope that twist wasn't true. That was crazy.
By the way, Val Kilmer, how is it? I've hung out with him a couple times and worked with him, and interesting guy, right?
That's a nice way of putting it. Yes, he is interesting.
We don't have to go further than that unless you want to.
I don't want it on public record. I will say this. He is an immensely talented actor.
Yes.
He is a very complicated man. And yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Okay. And Chris Christopherson.
Oh my God. That's a guy, my mother and my sister they went to see A Star Is Born multiple times in 1976.
I was a little girl.
We might have been conceived to A Star Is Born.
Yeah, we had the record and we just played it on loop. And my mom, our mom,
loved him.
Sing all Barbara's parts. And
my mother went through some bad periods in her life, and there was a period where Why Me Lord was on constantly. It was like a life preserver for her. I was a little kid. I couldn't quite wrap my head around why mom won't get out of bed. The covers over her head all weekend.
Yeah.
And so, so that song meant that to my mom. My sister's burgeoning teenage sexuality was drawn to it.
Yeah.
When we were doing the movie, my wife said, because we were about to close the deal, and there was a magazine, No Depression magazine. He was on the cover. And Carrie, we didn't know him at that point. I had done a Western with him, so I had met him, but I didn't know him. My wife walks by and she looks at the photo, and Chris was 72 when that photo was taken. And she said, you know what? I don't really know what it is, but whatever it is, that man got a double scoop.
So cute.
So,
well, he's a a Rhodes Scholar, a Golden Gloves boxer, a war veteran, and yes. And, well, here's a story. And actually, she kind of looks like you as I think about it, this girl in this story. We were hanging out at a place called the Blue Post in Wilmington. We hit it off, and we hung out every night in my apartment. We would play songs to each other and smoke a joint and tell stories. And so I got all of the stories, and I sang him songs that I had written, and he would sing me these fucking songs that you knew and tell me where it came from, how he wrote it, whatnot. But one night we're at the Blue Post, and they had a great jukebox, and Reese Thompson, the kid that played his grandson, had never heard of Chris Christopherson until we started doing the movie. And then he just absolutely idolized him. So I go to the jukebox and I play Leopard Pillbox Hat by Dylan. And it comes on. We're sitting in the corner, and Chris goes, I remember the day Bob recorded this. I said, what?
Wow.
He was the janitor at Columbia Studios when Bob recorded. Mm-hmm. He said there was a buyout. No musicians or songwriters were allowed in the building. He said there was one because he was emptying the ashtrays and sweeping the floor. It was me. He said, so I would sit there and I would watch through the window. I'd watch Bob work. He goes, he would sit underneath this grand piano and he would write in a notebook. And every now and then he'd reach up over him and he'd pick out some notes. And then he'd go back to his notebook and he goes, I remember the day he wrote that one because the band came in at about 5 o'clock as they were, I listened to him cut it. And I thought, ooh, that's a special one. So it's the song that's playing as he's telling us the story.
Oh, cool.
Well, this girl went to UNC Wilmington, college girl, gorgeous, voluptuous. She walks up. She goes, "Excuse me, I don't could I get your autograph?" Chris is like, yeah, sure. So he signs Bart napkin or something. And this is in the day of flip phones, cameras. And she goes, "Could we get a photo? Can I get a photo?" Yeah. So she hands her photo out to somebody of hers, and she's all snuggled. And I said she was holding him close like she was afraid he might catch a cold. And she goes, I just adore you. I love you. The Blade movies are my favorite movies ever.
Oh, no.
And Chris goes, oh, thank you. She goes, no, I love them. I love those movies. And Reese is sitting there. Reese goes, well, you should go play them on the jukebox. And she went, what? She goes, go play him on the jukebox. They got his greatest hits over there. She went, what? You're a singer?
Oh, God. Okay, so he spans, like, how many different generations know about this guy?
Well, I said, it was, my daughter had gotten on it because my daughter was a little girl when we did it. She was 9 when we shot. She was 11. It was when she was in high school years later. I forget what I was watching. It was one of the early films, and she went, oh, no, it was a photo. It was a photograph that she saw. And it was on my iPad. She went, ooh, who's that? I said, that's Chris. He went, that is Chris Christopherson? I said, yeah. She went, oh, my God. But I said, 3 generations of my family. Well, 4, counting my sister, my mother, my sister, my wife, and my daughter.
Ugh.
All crushes on Chris.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, the man's got a double scoop.
Yeah.
True. I
Exactly.
know. It lasts through the ages. He makes you doubt things. That's true.
Okay, and so I remember looking at you got T-Bone Burnett to do music producing on it or improvising?
We did.
That's
T-Bone,
huge.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't have gotten him 3 months later. It would have been impossible. But Stephen,
Can we say also he did "Oh Brother Where Art Thou"? We could
Yeah.
leave it at that, but he's a big deal.
Well, Crazy Heart happened while we were in post-production. Well, there's a story in and of that. And that's where T-Bone's rate went through the roof. But what happened is Steve Bruton, who Crazy Heart was loosely based on Bruton, and Bruton was the advisor for that film. He was Chris's lead guitar player through the whole time, and they were best friends. Well, Bruton was dying. He had terminal cancer. T-Bone had brought him out here. He was staying at T-Bone's place, his studio house, and he was going through alternative therapies. And he died there in T-Bone's place. But we got a phone call. Now, Travis Nicholson, who was working on the film with us behind the scenes, his dad, Gary Nicholson, started out in Texas with Christopherson, with T-Bone. He's a musician-songwriter. So Travis has known Chris since the day he was born. So we all kind of had everything's connected, right? Well, Chris got the phone call that Bruton, it's happening. He's leaving us. So we arranged the schedule, and Travis got it because his dad knew also, because he was tight with Bruton. So we changed our schedule to allow Chris to get back here to LA to say goodbye. So Chris flies back in. He spent the afternoon with Stephen at T-Bone's house, and then Stephen died the next morning. There's a story in that T-Bone tells. He has a meditation bell. It's like this Asian, I forget what country it was from, but it's got this pure tone. It's an antique. I don't know how many, but he brought it out and showed it to me. No, because how we got him is, so Travis has already tried to get T-Bone to do our music. Chris comes back to say goodbye to Bruton. He says, oh, I'm doing this movie about a musician. We're shooting in North Carolina. So T-Bone is getting it from every avenue that this project keeps coming across And then Chris did something. He had never written original music before. He wrote that original song for our movie. So we needed somebody to cut it. So T-Bone agreed. But when we were over there at the place, we were in the place where Stephen died. The bedroom is right across the hall. He brought this meditation bell out. And he said this, Stephen, it was like 4 a.m. or 5, somewhere in there, around the time the sun started to come up. Stephen's girlfriend was with him. And she heard the bell toll. And I think she said there were 3 tones. And she thought T-Bone was there. Like, oh, he's here awfully early. And then she rolls over and Stephen's dead. So, as T-Bone said, this bell rang its tone the moment that Stephen left this room.
Wow.
So, all that stuff kind of tied into, bringing us all together at the same place at the same time. And so I was there in Village Recorders, in the studio with T-Bone and Chris, and we hired a band. And so, yeah, it was. And then T-Bone, as we were mixing, we had cut and we were mixing. And when he got the phone call about Crazy Heart, the studio was moving up the Crazy Heart release date because he stepped out. He goes, I got to take this, guys. He steps out, then he steps back in and goes, we got to stop. I got to finish Crazy Heart. So, we got delayed. Yeah. We got delayed for about 3 weeks so that he could finish that movie. And then that movie, his rate skyrocketed. And,
God,
but yeah,
so lucky.
But having him and Chris, it was all the right spirits were supposed to all come together at that time,
That's awesome.
So
congratulations for finishing that. It is so hard to get a film up and running and made and produced and distributed. Congratulations. It's
Thank
huge.
you.
Yeah, and people can find it streaming now, right? I mean, we found it on Amazon.
Apple TV, I think.
Apple TV. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's streaming. Was it as part of the service, or because we were on Netflix for a few years, but it's been on there a while. Yeah. I know it was on iTunes, but to purchase for like $6 or something.
Yeah,
yeah,
we paid for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's on any streaming service free at the moment.
Yeah,
but I do know it's out there that you can buy it.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
it's worth it. You can stream it for $4. It's not a big if you don't want to buy it.
Yeah,
everybody watch that.
yeah, I love the storytelling there, and I realize now, this late in my life, I've never been a big country music fan, but just doing this research with you and hearing about.
I can't believe that we were born in the same family.
I know.
We lived on a ranch. We were born on a ranch in Northern California. We grew up on Dolly Parton.
I know. Our mom's from Texas. Our dad, they both grew up in folk music in the 60s. So it was very, we get the guitar and play by the fire and harmonica and the whole thing. I don't know. I found rock. I guess I grew up liking that a bit more.
It's all good.
Yeah.
My mom is still a huge music fan. My first concert, I was the Callaway County Fairgrounds, 1968, right before I turned 4 years old. Was the Porter Wagner show with Dolly Parton and Speck Rhodes.
Wow.
So
nice.
Dolly had just started on Porter's show, and I was a little bitty boy. I was 4 years old, and it was the first time I'd seen in person people that I saw on TV. So my 4-year-old brain kind of put together like, oh my God, they're real. They're real people. But it was me when puberty hit, and I discovered Kiss was my gateway drug into punk and heavy metal because I love Kiss.
Oh, yeah.
And so it wasn't until I moved to Chicago and I was learning to play, and WXRT, the cool rock station, played Steve Earle, Copperhead Road, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I'm like, oh my God, this is a country song, but this is kind of metal. This is dark. And I was learning to play. And then my appreciation for Hank Williams, the first song I ever remember, I was a toddler, was I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. Aww. Because both my grandmothers had Hank Williams records. They had different covers, but they were collections. And both of them had that song on it. And I can remember as a little boy hearing that and thinking, that man sounds so sad.
You connect. See, that's a testimony to your emotional depth at that age too.
Yeah. And Dolly Parton talks about that. They have the podcast Dolly Parton's America, And I think it's like, maybe 10 parts or something. So it's something you can kind of binge and listen to. But she talks about these are stories from her people, in the mountains, and just the storytelling is so beautiful. And now I need to get into this. I'm feeling my country.
There's a lot of pap, there's a lot of slick stuff, and some of Dolly's stuff is Vegas Dolly,
right?
But you listen, she did 3 bluegrass records about 15-20 years ago. The first one's called The Grass is Blue, and she does bluegrass versions of like Stairway to Heaven, but there's a song called Down from Dover. I dare you listen to that song and not get emotionally wrenched.
Wow.
Down from Dover by Dolly Parton. And then again, you find those nuggets. Look for the Townes Van Zandt, who was a great writer. Some of the records I don't care for. I don't care for the production, but the songs are Dylan level good. Steve Earle is my favorite ever. So yeah, if you dig, there's some great music. I mean, it grew out of folk music and country music are first cousins.
Yeah.
There are a lot of similarities in that.
And rock, taking the old Delta blues and then the Led Zeppelins, and it all ties together.
All throughout blues. Country is just blues. It's American blues music combined with Scots-Irish folk music. And hence you got country music.
Yeah. Now, speaking of all of this, your band, are you guys playing? What's the name of your band and what's happening with that?
We are Sacred Cowboys. We were a band. We started back in the aughts, kind of evolved out of Deadwood. I met this musician who was working in the background, who was a musician who played pedal steel, Mike Johnstone. And season 2 of Deadwood, I'd been playing with some guys. We got together. It was a dad band of sorts. It started my 40th birthday party. We had rented the Cat Club. So we decided we're going to play. So we put a 45-minute set together of cover songs. And like, there was something like, oh, there's something here. Like the guys were musicians far more than me. So we'd kind of kept it up. But it was all rock music and mostly hard rock. And then we had the House of Blues for the season 2 wrap of Deadwood. And the producer said, hey, if you want to bring your band, if you guys want to play some. Well, I met Mike and I knew he played pedal steel and I wanted to do some country music because it's apropos for Deadwood.
Sure.
So I went to Mike and then I went and got Ralph Stevens, who used to be my neighbor, who used to play piano for Jackie DeShannon.
Wow.
Mike and Ralph are both a generation older than me. That's kind of how it evolved. And we had that group of personalities in a room. There was that spark. I felt it from the moment we started playing. And not everybody, it's not like everybody's best friends in that band, but that combination of sensibilities. So we became a band. We played quite a bit.
Wow.
And then we ended up, I had a problem when Deadwood stopped. It was always promoted like the guy from Deadwood. So people would come out, it's country rock music with the guy from Deadwood. Well, after the show was over, I felt like a loser. Like I believed in the band, like whatever brings people through the door, I know this band is going to knock them on their socks. But to go out and do promotion and shit, like the show's over.
Yeah. So
I was busy. We got booked to do Stagecoach. Word kind of spread. And I love telling this story. The band that opened it, they played before us on the Palomino stage. I don't know whatever happened to those guys, the Zach Brown band.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we played the Palomino stage at 3 on that Saturday at Stagecoach 09. The response was phenomenal. And we were at the point of like, okay, we got to do this, which means get in the white van and tour. I could not afford to do it. We were in production on Bloodworth at that point, and I had to give myself the Bloodworth. So I kind of mothballed the band, like right when the momentum is building up for us, and I couldn't do it. So I missed it like crazy. And we decided when the Deadwood movie came around, we're like, fuck it. Let's all get back together and see if we can still play.
Nice.
So we have tracked new music. We have 2 videos that I am over the moon about how good they were. I conceived them, and then I brought in these artists to do them. And then Peter is a Oscar-nominated filmmaker, my lead guitar player.
Wow.
He made these things. I cannot wait to share them. We're just trying to find the right time and the right way we can distribute them. So we've had a couple of songs used. Stuff's been used in films. We use the closing credits song of Bloodworth is Sacred Cowboys.
Okay.
Tell me your secret. We cut that with T-Bone remixed the version that I had already cut. But yeah, that closing credits song in Bloodworth is Sacred Cowboys.
That's so.
All the songs are great.
Was that also you guys with that 2-part harmony, just the a cappella, the 2 guys singing in Bloodworth?
Oh, that is Tim O'Brien and Daryl. Escapes my. No, it's not us.
Yeah, that was Tingles too. That was an amazing song.
And Gasoline and Matches. I sang that. I sing sometimes and was with the bands, and we did a cover of that too. Beautiful song.
Well, I knew with that, we couldn't do the storm. Like, we could not afford to do a tornado. In the book, it's a blizzard. Well, we knew that's out. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tornado. So we set up, that it's blowing in, like there's a hurricane that's sending weather up that's kind of seeded earlier in the movie that bad weather's coming their way. Wow. But we couldn't afford to really properly film the damage of it hitting the house. So I'm the one that came. I said, "How about if we just use music? If we just use this Heart of Gold? It's a Hank Williams recorded it. It's a Hank Williams song. Daryl Scott and Tim O'Brien, and I just that's one of my favorite moments in the movie because you just have these 2 incredible voices, Thank you for noticing. That makes me happy that you picked up on it like that.
It was gorgeous. Yeah. So much art in that too. And I was going to say, this sounds kind of kooky, but going back to Deadwood and your scene after the fight and sitting there not able to talk and wondering if you're okay. It did have this kind of Rodin thinker sculpture kind of just the artistry. You pull it off really well. So good.
Well, thank you. Well, I would like to say that was the reason I did it. It was more like I'm trying to hide my balls from the camera.
He had a big forward lean.
That's so profound.
Now, what does your wife think of any love scenes and stuff like that? I'm always so curious about this with acting.
Yeah, I mean, she's okay with it. She never had a problem. There was one movie I did that there was an actress I was working with that we had intimate scenes, and there was kind of a spark. Like, if we were both single people, we probably would have dated. My wife could smell that on me a mile away.
That's it.
Yeah. And that's been the only time where she was like, But all the other times, there was one, and it's a great little small film that the lead guitar player in my band made it called Dunsmore. A little low budget film. And I had, multiple full on nude sex scenes in it. And the actress that was playing, the younger actress who was in it, we hit it off, and my wife was friends with her, and cause she's young and pretty, and, and Carrie had no, again, she can smell a boner on me from a mile away. So there's no use to me ever even trying to pretend to hide it. So,
can we quote you on that? Can that be the lead of our
you can smell
episode?
a boner a mile. Oh, I'm writing it down.
Oh my goodness.
The one on me. On me.
Okay.
Only his. It's specific.
Yeah. Do you want to end with something ridiculous and do the 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon to...
We came up with a game idea. So
now, she has always been a super fan of Chris.
I love Coldplay. This is like talking about love stories and heartbreak and all this, right? I went through a big breakup with my husband. Sounds like you guys with Carrie, that you had a breakup and get back together and you finally ended up together. Well, that was us. And Coldplay got me through. So I transferred all those love feelings onto Chris Martin because he and my husband look a lot alike.
It's strange.
Talk about some Freudian stuff. But so I still love Chris Martin. Can't help myself. He married Gwyneth Paltrow. So I said, instead of the Kevin Bacon game, let's play with W. Earl Brown. We'll play the Gwyneth Paltrow game, or whatever you want to call it. So can you connect yourself through your movies, your works, back to, well, Chris Martin or Gwyneth Paltrow?
Well, I saw also in your email, didn't I see Adam Sandler on there too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was my guy.
And yeah.
That was your guy? Well, I can connect all of them together.
No.
Oh.
Well, I can connect to Gwyneth. What was her cousin? I was in a Chekhov class out here in LA in 1994 with her first cousin. And then we used to go out to Bruce and her parents' house. Gwyneth still lived there. We had class at their house a few times. I never met Gwen.
That's Bruce Dern and her mom.
Dannon, right?
No, Bruce Paltrow. Bruce Paltrow was her father.
Oh God.
Was Blythe her mom?
Yeah,
yes,
it's Danner.
That's what. Okay.
Yeah. And then her cousin, she was in a few movies, and she had a TV show. Name escapes me at the moment. But the Adam Sandler and Chris Martin, when Judd Apatow decided he was going to get back into doing stand-up, he did shows over at that theater down by the mall over in Beverly Hills.
We were there. Flappers?
No.
No.
Beverly
It's a
Hills?
theater. Yeah, it's in Beverly Hills.
Oh.
What's the big indoor mall in Beverly Center?
Oh.
There's a theater just like a block away. Oh God, what's the name of it?
Oh, on West 3rd?
Largo.
Oh, Largo at the Cornet, yeah.
Largo, Cornet, yes. So I went to see one of Judge, I want to say it was the second night.
Wow.
He's good. I saw him at Kaboo, and it was a great.
Well, he had special guests that were going to pop in, and one of them was Adam Sandler.
That's right.
Adam was there. So he brought Adam out to do a bit. And then he goes, I got a buddy in the audience. Hey, Chris, come up here. Sitting right in front of me was Chris Martin.
Ah.
So he brings Chris up on stage to improvise a song. And Chris, you could tell this wasn't a plant. Chris did not want to get up. And Joe's like, come on up here, come on. And so he gets at the piano and he improvises a song about how uncomfortable he is. And he makes the audience laugh. And he finishes, and Apatow walks out and he goes, all right, you look like Chris Martin. You play music like Chris Martin. I don't look like that. I can't play music like that. But you're funny. You're funny. You got the audience laughing. I'm the fucking funny guy. Get off my stage.
He's good. He's so cute.
At the Largo that included Adam Sandler and Chris Martin.
That's amazing.
You did it.
Largo.
You did it. Very good.
Did it.
And comedy, bringing it all back around.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Well, thank you.
This has been so fun. Do we have any more questions?
We have more questions that I hate to.
I know we're being selfish with his time, but I know.
Well, you're going
promised
to
a few.
get out of this anyway, so.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a little editing on mostly me and weird questions I asked you. Well,
I feel like we
hit
asked a lot.
pretty
Oh, I
much
wanted to know
everything.
about your fight scene with Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh.
That was crazy too.
and P.T. Anderson, because I'm a fan of his, and if you had a chance
Well,
to meet him.
I was a fan also. I mean, again, because I knew Riley, so I'd seen since Hard Eight, because Riley was in it, and those two guys were best buds. And I actually met Paul. This was Tom Petty and Steve Earle playing at the Santa Barbara Bowl, and John and Paul were there. And they were sitting right behind us. So that was John had introduced me to him, but I just knew him. This was after Boogie Nights. So with The Master, I knew that movie was being made because they were so super secretive about it because they were afraid of Scientology mutzing with them, you know. So I got a call from my agent, and he said, "Are you comfortable fighting?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, but really fighting, not stage fighting.
Oh
said,
yeah, you guys were.
It looks so.
There was
Yeah,
no stunts, right?
No, it was just us. It's all in one take.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, I actually like hitting people. I don't like getting hit that much, but I'm not real quick. So, it's a trade-off. So I usually avoid it, but yeah, I'm fine fighting. And he said, well, there's this Paul Thomas Anderson film, Cassandra Has Called, and they want somebody that can go toe to toe with Joaquin Phoenix, because Joaquin he can't do stunts. He gets so into the moment. So they need an actor who, and I said, yeah, sure. So I expected Paul, because he's so cinematic, I expected him to be one of these guys that's got every shot and every cut in his head. If, I figured storyboarded, because there are guys that are so visual, they know every place they want to take it. So I met him the day before we shot, when I had makeup confab and stuff. And I went in and said hello. We were in the department store. They were shooting at that location. Super nice guy, and introduced me to Joaquin. And Joaquin didn't, he called himself Joaquin. He wasn't one of these, you got to call me by my
Val
character.
Kilmer, Jim Morrison. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. He wasn't like that, but he stayed in that headspace the whole time. And introduced, he goes, yeah, thanks for coming out. Now, did they tell you, when we do this, are you comfortable if you hit me? Are you comfortable if you hit me? I said, yeah, I was told, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, yeah, because it's just yeah. He starts to walk away and turns, goes, what about if I hit you? If I hit you, are you okay if I hit you? I said, yeah, man, we'll just work it out, whatever, sure. So the next day we get there, and Paul, we're in costume, and we were rehearsing. And the whole crew's there, and it was a scene. It was like 2 pages of dialogue. Going back to Deadwood, like the post-fight scene, it was dialogue, and I was a businessman. I was there to get my portrait taken, but I thought maybe I could get a print for my wife. She'd probably like that. So I was supposed to be this jovial, and so we're reading it, and Paul walks up and he goes, this is not good. This is really not good, which is the first fucking thing you want to hear your director say.
Yeah.
And he says, it's the writing. It's the writing. I'm too on the nose. It's too obvious. Can you improvise? To me, and I said, yeah. He goes, are you fine with improv? I said, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, okay, close the set. Everybody off. Close it out. So set's clear. All right, let's see what happens. Let's see. So we start kind of blocking through it, and we lead up, and the first time he grabs me by the throat, and I punch him. But I knew, like, I can't fully hit him because I'll knock his ass out, because I got a clean shot right to the side of the head. So I was trying to, like, loosen the punch. Well, we went through it a few times that we would get to that crescendo. And I noticed Paul, like, calling people over, department heads. And at one point he goes, look, I'm going to turn the camera on. Just turn it on. We'll tail slate. Turn it on. Okay, let's just do one. Let's just do one. So he backs off. We did it 6 times, 6 takes. There's no cuts. It stays on Joaquin. There's a lot of headspace in there in the frame. You don't see me at first. You hear me, but you don't see me, which brings this tension, and you have him on this side of the frame, butts in with the camera. And then as he moves over toward me, the camera pans back or pulls back some and trucks with him. And then you got a 2-shot. Most of that interaction happens with a 2-shot. And then I knock the shit out of him. And I shove him out of frame. So you get the empty frame. And then Paul moves back. And then we both enter. And then, no cuts.
Someone threw a chair at one point, too.
I threw, yeah. In that take, I flipped there's a love seat. And I flip it as he's throwing glass at me. Because we had breakaway glass. We knew we had that was available to us. And so every single review picked out that scene, talk about the tension of the scene. And I went back to it time and again of like how Paul and his DP got that. They got it with their framing, they got it with their sound mix, but he trusted. He knew that he had it in one take.
That's crazy.
And he knew that he didn't need cutaways.
And it was kind of cool when
did they dolly it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know all the terminology because I'm not in the biz, but they dollied it. And then you lose Joaquin behind that column and then he comes out, which was so realistic. It was just like you knew it was a real
Yeah.
scene. It was great.
Yes, it was. It was on a dolly. So I want to say it was it. I want to say it was tracked that we had track. But yeah, it did dolly. It moved over when he walked
Yeah.
over. It followed. He panned back a little bit to open the frame up, and he moved with him, which sets us in a 2-shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fight starts happening, and then the frame just centers us. It moves back over and centers us as I flip the couch over, and I'm chasing him, and he's throwing containers at me.
Wow.
And then as he starts, the camera then follows him past that post, and then he walks out of frame.
By the way, that's another. Sorry, I got excited though with your 6 Degrees with Adam Sandler. You got P.T. Anderson and Punch Drunk Love right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that was an amazing scene. That was hugely standout in that film.
Yeah. And again, I've watched it countless. I mean, Paul may have conceived of it as a 1. He never, ever said that. And he wasn't there setting up, multiple shots. He just trusted the frame. And he was able to use, so much of it is the space and stuff that he allows in the frame that builds up that sense of tension. I mean, the acting was there. That was there. But we weren't the only things that made it work.
What building was it? Was it downtown LA?
Downtown, it was an old abandoned apartment store that the first floor was now like a sandwich shop or whatnot. The second floor was still there, just abandoned.
Crazy.
They just had to dress it,
Wow.
So I'm not sure what it was like it was some brand company that knew, what it had once been. But yeah, it was downtown LA.
Wow. My friend worked on Punch Drunk Love. He worked on that, and he said that P.T. Anderson would show up and sometimes just like, that fish tank is amazing. And they would just throw away the script, and somehow the story would get created around something in the moment. So I wonder if he was a bit like that, which is so cool with these big budget films that you would just...
I've loved everything. I did not care for the, what was the based on that book. No, the one based on the book.
He had, let's see, Boogie Nights.
Inherent Vice.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't my favorite either.
I didn't care. I did like one of the best sex scenes ever filmed. All you see is her face. It's a long scene. It's a great you don't see anything really. But it works. That was the only part of the film. I didn't care much for the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I just rewatched Magnolia and Boogie Nights.
Good.
Too long since quarantines happened.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Lends a lot of time for that. That's good.
Alfred Molina, still my favorite. Jesse's Girl. All right.
Yeah.
But we want to end on you because let's see, let's find a good ending.
Well, you've mentioned Dad Band earlier.
Yes.
Let's encourage everybody. We're trying to make something more of Dad Band. In an ideal world, we could do 10 half-hour episodes that tell a whole story because I've got it all laid out. I'm writing a feature version also. But we made that with Cantrell and my buddy Ted Camp, who plays the keyboard player in the band. He and I came up with, he had the idea for the song. And then I said, well, if we're going to do a song and a video, we should make a short film. So that's how it evolved. We've got 1.1 million views on YouTube. Yeah.
Great.
And the response has been phenomenal. So we've only done the one. We want to do more, but we're not going to do it. We got to have a budget. We got to get paid. I'm not going to do it for free.
Right.
So yeah, Dad Band on YouTube. Dad Band.
Pretty
on
self-explanatory.
YouTube with W. Earl Brown. Do you want to give us a little premise of that, or just go look it up?
I can give you a one-sentence premise. It is about the formation and dissolution of a suburban dad band on a single Saturday afternoon.
I love it.
Oh,
It's like the minivan commercial that was all the rage for a while. Did you see that one?
Which one?
Oh, it was the suburban couple rocking the minivan. It was right when I was in my minivan phase. So I was feeling the vibe, but I'll look it up. We'll send it to you.
okay. Dad Band. Everybody look that up.
Yep. Very good.
I want to make more.
You guys look up W. Earl Brown on IMDb and just look at the plethora of movies and TV, and body of work. I mean, we're going back to Backdraft to current day. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what a get. We're so honored that you came on our show, and couldn't be happier to
Thank
meet
you.
you and talk with you.
All right. It's been fun.
Yay. Thank
Love
you
you
so
much.
much. Bye.